We're all here ready for our budget hearings, and so I think this is going to be technically your meeting. We're going to ask a lot of questions. I've already got some questions. I've been reviewing these books prepared by Lindsay. Good job, by the way. I'm sure you and a lot of other people prepare these books, but I've been reading them, and I already have some questions. So without further ado, Mr. Manager, I think I'll just turn this over to you and see how this goes.
Okay, outstanding. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm going to make some short opening remarks, and then I'll pass it over to the really smart one in the room, Lindsay, and then we'll start the particular departments or divisions in their budget presentations. So with my prepared remarks, I'll start out. Obviously, the last few weeks we've been knee-deep into it, the budget process. So with the 2017 budget requests have been made for 6 consecutive years of tight budgets. Since 2010, total county spending, including the fire district, has decreased by 1%. Some short statistics: in that same period, demand for county services has increased in most areas, with 911 calls increasing by 29%. EMS responses have increased by 21%. The number of clients served by ComCare has increased by 4%. And the number of people eligible for developmental disability service has increased by 12%. So we are providing more service with fewer people. Since 2010, the number of authorized county staffing has decreased by 7% to 2,954. But because of the stresses of the increased workloads, employees are leaving county employment in increasing numbers, so the real workforce reduction is even greater, which we briefed in the workshop a few weeks ago. In 2015, 14% of Sedgwick County workers voluntarily left the county. A Johnson County survey of comparable jurisdictions found their average rate of voluntary vacancies was less than 9%. In reviewing the 2017 budget requests, I've noticed some common themes. We've reached the point where we can no longer do more with less. To continue providing timely and effective services as demanded by our constituents, department managers have requested nearly $10 million of additions to the budget. As you will see the next several days, some of these are for additional people, some are for known or unavoidable cost increases for utilities or contracted services, and some are for new equipment or technology that will increase efficiency. None of these requests are frivolous, but we will definitely need to evaluate their relative priority against services and service levels we currently provide. In addition to these requests by departmental managers, there are 2 organizational needs we must address. The first is a series of changes to wage and hour regulations that will require us to increase the pay of many employees, either by raising their base pay or by paying them overtime for hours worked in excess of 40 hours per week. We don't yet know what the final regulations will say or when they will take effect, but I will recommend that budget authority be established to cover the new cost. The second is base pay of county workforce. The Evergreen Comp and Class study completed in 2014 demonstrated that on average county workers are paid nearly 7% below market. We responded by increasing worker pay an average of 3.75%. Since then, the market has continued to increase at a rate that has exceeded our pay adjustment pool. So now, as we briefed a few weeks ago, we're at 7+%. As a result, county jobs are increasingly difficult to fill, and this is especially true of certain key jobs such as detention deputies. The number of full-time employees on the county payroll at the end of 2015 was only 2,524, 12% fewer than at the end of 2010. I recommend that budget authority be established to address this serious issue. The guiding principles that will inform my budget recommendations remain the same as when I first explained them earlier this year and published to all the departments. Continued emphasis on core services, reduced government funding to services that can only be provided by non-governmental entities or through private sector or other funding support, reduce debt and reliance on bonding, and maintain the mill levy rate at the 2010 level. As you hear the budget presentations this week and in the weeks to follow, I will welcome your thoughts about the best way to balance the increasing demand for essential county services with our available resources, and I will do my best to deliver a recommended 2017 budget in July that fulfills your goals for Sedgwick County. Thank you. Lizzie.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This afternoon, we'll go over a forecast update from what you last saw at your retreat in February. We'll focus, of course, primarily on 2017 initially, since that is the budget year that we're approaching, but we'll also talk about what key assumptions are driving 2018 through 2021. We'll also talk about a few things that currently aren't in the forecast. The manager mentioned a couple, but are things that we need to keep on our radars so that we can update it when the time is right. We'll review it by fund, similar to what you saw at the retreat, and so to that end, you should have two handouts at your seats. The first is this presentation. The second is a big sheet that looks like this, similar to what you got at the retreat, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we move through this presentation. We'll also go over quickly what to expect as we move through the budget reviews, along with a refresher of key dates. So, of course, the purpose of our forecast is to estimate actual future outcomes based on the information that we have today, the best available information, and what we believe are our reasonable assumptions. We do that so we can identify potential problems really before they become problems, so that you may take actions to avoid that. And we do it also to help inform decisions about potentially new projects, programs, or policies. So moving right into it then, for the 2017 financial forecast, and you'll see many of these issues outlined in the top portion of your long handout. We do plan for assessed value to increase by about 1.4% next year. Once we take into account delinquencies and distributions to TIFs and to DIFs, we think that that will generate about an additional $1 million of revenue. Of course, we know that we continue the phase out for the mortgage registration fee. 2017 will be the third year of that, and we anticipate to lose from our estimates in 2016 to our estimates in 2017 about $1.4 million. That will be slightly offset by those per page filing fee increases that the legislature put in, but we only anticipate about an additional $77,000 of revenue from that in 2017. We do continue to plan for modest growth in some of our other revenue streams, including retail sales, motor vehicle taxes. We do have a pretty significant increase in our medical charges for service in 2017, about $1 million. More than half of that we anticipate to come from the Wesley ER that's coming online in Derby, and we anticipate having increased transports, and so that's about $550,000 of that increase. Moving then to our expense assumptions. These are outlined in kind of that second mini table on your handout. We do currently have a 2.5% pay adjustment included in the forecast. That's about $2.7 million, but that includes not just compensation, but also all of the labor taxes we would have to pay on top of that. We also plan for a 7% increase in the employer portion of employee health insurance premiums. In 2017, the forecast includes an additional $1.5 million for the election equipment. We've talked about that for several years. You've already set aside $4.5 million. This would round out to $6 million, which is the estimated price tag. And of course, we'll have Tabitha speaking just after me, and she can give you some more information and updates on that. We also have cash for capital projects included in 2017, and the amounts that are shown there. Now, the facilities and drainage number of $5.7 million is a little bit higher than what you saw at the retreat. That's because we've added $2 million of cash for capital projects related to the Law Enforcement Training Center for 2017. We also have a total of $18.2 million included for roads and bridges. A good chunk of that, about $14.8 million, is related to the half of the sales tax. that's dedicated to those projects. The remaining $3.4 million is what we've talked about to replace the otherwise debt-funded road and bridge costs. Continuing with expenses, we know that our costs continue to go up, just like everybody at home. Right now, the forecast includes an increase in our retirement costs of about 5.6%. As we get those final numbers from the state, we'll be able to update that information for you. We also you typically see utilities increase about 5% when we do this presentation, and that is still in the forecast. However, we also know that the 271 building will be fully operational. We planned for at the end of this year, and so this increase includes a full year of utilities for that facility, and you'll hear more about that during the facilities budget presentation. The next couple you'll also hear about from the sheriff, inmate food, and inmate medical. By contract, we know that those costs will go up, and so that is what those cost increases look like. And then, of course, we know that we always have increases in our software and hardware maintenance contracts. We do have some anticipated new costs related to election equipment and some issues for MABCD. We also anticipate increases in our tax system, and so that's what's driving that $200,000 increase you see there. So then moving into the outer years of the forecast, we'll be at a little bit higher level. We do continue to plan for modest growth in our assessed valuation, and you can see what those rates are in each year of the forecast. We also plan for our retail sales and use tax to continue to moderately grow. Same thing for our motor vehicle taxes. And after we get over that one-time spike we talked about for medical charges for service in 2017 related to the Wesley ER, we plan for those medical charges for service to grow similar to the rate we have our transports growing each year. And we know that also in 2019, the phase out of the mortgage registration fee will be complete. So then moving to expense assumptions, we do continue to have a 2.5% pay pool included for each year of the forecast. Our health costs, for now, we continue to plan for a 7% increase. Obviously, as there's any adjustments to the plan, we'll take that into account. We know that we'll have a 2018 gubernatorial and a 2020 presidential election in those years, and so we've included cost adjustments for that. We have used the current adopted CIP with a couple of adjustments. In 2018, we have added the EMS garage, funded with cash at about $630,000. We also have plans to use general fund cash to support roads and bridges, unspecified facilities projects in 2021 because our adopted CIP only went through 2020. And then we know that we'll have some equipment needs. Our radio replacement needs that we talked about at the retreat. And so we have that factored into the forecast for 2019 and 2020. So then I said we'd talk about things that aren't included. And just because they're not included doesn't mean they're not important. It just means that at this point we don't have enough information to provide you with what we think is a reasonable assumption. First of all, we know that 271 may or may not be filled out on those additional floors. And so as those additional occupants are identified, there may be some opportunities for cost savings there, or there may be some increased costs. And so we haven't yet factored that in until we know what that plan is. With the Law Enforcement Training Center, of course, that's still being developed and worked on. We don't know what those additional operating costs will be yet. Once we have an agreement, we can start factoring those values in. As the manager referenced on the next two, we know that we're going to have some changes to the FLSA rules, meaning that some of our employees will go from being exempt from being overtime to now being eligible for overtime. And depending on how we address that, we'll need to include that in the forecast. The manager talked about his goal to increase that market pay, make that more comparable to our peers. We don't know what that will look like, and so that's not yet been included in the forecast. And finally, we know that the property tax lid will be enforced in 2017, and how that will factor into later years is a little difficult to understand at this point. So that has not yet been incorporated to potentially change the levy or reduce expenses. So what does all of this mean? This slide shows our operating results in the general fund. When we talked at the retreat, we talked about how there were some of our funds where we were going to intentionally draw down our fund balance. So typically when we look at operating results, we look at the aggregate of all 8 of our property tax supported funds. But in this case, because of those intentions, we're going to look at this on a case or a fund by fund basis. And so looking at the general fund, on the left side of the screen, you'll see the operating income and deficit. And so when we were at the retreat, what you saw for 2017 in the general fund was actually an operating surplus. You'll see that now we have a deficit projected of $1.7 million. And that's really the combination of 2 primary things. First is the addition of $2 million for the Law Enforcement Training Center in 2017. Second is day reporting. We know that in the 2016 adopted budget, the future of that program depended on whether there would be revenue that would come in to support it. And so we know that there's still some discussion going on about that. And so the forecast currently includes expenses of about $900,000 per year for day reporting, but it assumes that we would get about half of that in revenue. And so all of that is, of course, subject to change, but that's why you see an operating deficit in 2017 and slightly larger deficits than what you had seen at the retreat in those outer years. What you can see on the right is the forecasted ending balance. And this is, of course, on a budgetary basis. I'll give that shout out here to my boss. But you can see that our estimated minimum balance, we still remain above our estimated minimum balance, even with those deficits included in the general fund. So then moving to our next set of funds, we'll look at the highway fund, the EMS fund, and the debt service fund. In the EMS fund, we had talked about using cash to do 2 posts and to do the garage when we talked at the retreat. And so you can see that on your handout reflected in rows 74 through 76. And so that is the primary driver behind those deficits you see in the EMS fund. That's a planned drawdown fund balance. That's a deficit we're okay with seeing, at least at this point, based on what we know. Within the highway fund, we know that we've talked about using fund balance in the highway fund to pay for roads and bridges in the amount of about $1 million for 2016, 2017, and 2018. And so you'll see that reflected in these numbers so that we get to our targeted ending fund balance, which is shown on that right slide and shown in more table on in rows 42 through 51 on your handout. Within the debt service fund, we're simply basically trying to maintain the fund balance that we've got. So shifting to the final 3 funds, other than WSU, which we know that money comes in and goes directly out, so we won't focus on that. But for aging, ComCare, and noxious weeds, we are planning to draw those fund balances down to what seems like a more appropriate level for the types of business performed in those funds. And so you can see that, of course, at no point in the forecast do we project insolvency. And again, these are targeted drawdowns of fund balance. Excuse me. So typically we would have a slide that would show you all of this taken together, kind of the true bottom line, which would be reflected in row 41 on your handout. But again, because we're trying to take this on a fund by fund basis, there's not one particular slide that does that. So shifting away from our property tax supported funds to what you'll be hearing about across all funds for the BoCC budget reviews, just a reminder, this is not the recommended budget. This is a compilation of the requests put together by departments that will include their budgetary requests along with decision packages, alternative reductions, and revenue packages that all would propose changes to how business is done currently. The purpose of these reviews is to provide you with information and discuss the most pressing issues to get your insight and direction. The budget information that's contained in your hearing documents is different than what I just presented in the forecast. We haven't done any budget adjustments for increases in costs of doing business. Those will come to you via decision package requests or requests for additional funding. We, with the intent of keeping a flat budget, And done with our historic practice, we've included fleet and administrative charges at the 2016 budget level, and we'll have that updated for you in the recommended budget. And finally, we don't have any capital improvement projects included within departmental budgets, though you heard all of those that are included in the forecast. So what you'll hear about over the next 2 weeks are budget requests totaling just more than $413 million. In addition, you'll hear requests for additional funding totaling just more than $9.9 million. And you can see on the slide what some of those things are: elections, voting equipment, EMS call demand, 911 call demand, and staffing, district court training needs. Again, the manager pointed out that these aren't frivolous requests, just a matter of evaluating them against what we currently do. You'll also hear about revenue packages or opportunities to increase our revenue. And you'll hear about alternative reduction proposals or ways to save money by doing business differently. So today we'll begin our budget discussions. Those will continue through next Thursday. On June 23rd, that's kind of the drop dead day, what we've asked the manager to give us decisions to be included in the recommended budget in order to publish that document and get it turned around to you so that it may be presented by the manager on July 13th. July 20th is what we've got scheduled for our last update, which, just a reminder, is when we tell citizens what the maximum spending amount would be and the maximum levy would be that would be included in the 2017 budget. We have 2 public hearings set for discussion on the recommended budget. July 27th, which is a Wednesday at 9 a.m., and then Thursday, August 4th at 6 p.m., both in this room, and then with the goal of getting that budget adopted on August 10th. For folks who want to follow along with the process, the video or the reviews that we'll be going through the next 2 weeks will be recorded and posted on the website. Once the recommended budget has been presented to you, it will also be posted to the website, and we'll have the online public hearings that we've had similar to the last few years. And then, of course, we'll have the public hearings we just talked about. And, of course, as any good budgeteer would do, we'll end the presentation with Cronus's Law of Budgeting. And that is, funding is never the problem. Priorities are the problem. So, therefore, some things must be low priority. So, with that, I'm happy to take any questions, or we can turn it over to the election commissioner.
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Ranzau?
Yeah, Lindsay, I have a question about the forecast update. I understand we put in an extra $2 million from law enforcement training.
Yes.
And a few other things, and I saw that's went from $4 million to 6.5. Operating income deficit projected. Anyway.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
But the general fund has just changed $1 million.
When we had presented at the retreat, we had a forecasted surplus of $676,000.
Never mind. Got it.
Okay.
I was just subtracting the 2, and I should have added it on. Got it. Okay.
Any other questions for me? All right.
Takes a little while to absorb everything we just saw, so give us just a moment here.
That's fair.
Do you know what the so in 2018 we lose a little bit more of the mortgage registration fee?
Right.
How much are we getting from that in 2017? I guess the delta. You know, I know we're getting the
Sure.
per page filing fees. How much more are we expected to lose in 20?
And-
how much are we getting in 2017, and what's the effect in 2018 as well?
Sure. The anticipated collections for mortgage registration fee in 2017 are $4.175 million. For 2018, we're forecasting to receive $2.783 million, and so that gives us a difference of roughly $1.4 million.
And is the per page filing fee, is that revenue going to go up a little bit at the same time?
It will, and so for 2017, we're forecasting that will bring in $1.505 million. In 2018, we're anticipating that to go up to $1.583 million.
Okay.
And so that's the basis for slide 3, those numbers that you see there.
And of course, those projections are in the out years as you graph those out. Those are
Right.
taken into account.
Right, so that in 2019, there would be no mortgage registration fee revenue, but we would anticipate about an additional $70,000 to $80,000 per year in officer fees.
Okay. So, what was presented to us just now also is a total of $4.65 million for the LETC.
Right, yes,
Okay.
sir.
We'll be talking about that more on Wednesday. All right. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Don't think so. So I guess we're going to transition to the next thing, Mr. Manager.
Very good.
Yes, next we have the election commissioner.
And I don't see her, so we'll give her a quick call and ask
That's
her.
fine. We'll just take a few minutes to look at our paperwork, and when she shows
Okay.
up, we'll get back at it. Thank you. Oh, there she is.
Tabitha, were your ears burning? You have perfect timing. Is really what it comes down to.
Of course, our agenda schedule is just I guess we can deviate a little bit if we need to. So, Commissioner Lehman, I guess we're ready for your presentation if you're ready.
Guess I walked in just in the nick of time.
There you go.
Well, good afternoon, commissioners. It is good afternoon. We'll just jump right in. I'm not going to waste your time and try to get through this as quickly as possible, so if you have questions, I can get them answered. Obviously, our mission is to provide all eligible Sedgwick County citizens the opportunity to register and vote and participate in an informed manner in simple, accessible, and secure elections. We have two main cost centers, and then we have divisions kind of within those. So we have our administration side of the office and then election operations. We've got that divided out, and we'll go through that more in depth here in a minute. All of our operations are in Tier 1 category. We have general administration of the election office, where we facilitate all financial planning, record keeping, billing, personnel, logistics. We serve all eligible registered voters in Sedgwick County. We are currently just shy of 280,000 registered voters. About a year and a half ago, looking at past data, we thought we would be at about 280,000 registered voters in November, but we are close to that number now. So we are seeing a significant increase in people wanting to register and get ready to vote this coming fall election cycle. So that is both exciting to see and also kind of scary to see. So we are upping our numbers for election workers as well as things at the polling locations for this fall. Also in election administration, we also have election administration, where we make sure we are in compliance with federal and state laws for conducting elections. We serve all eligible registered voters in Sedgwick County. We do that with internal staff as well. Voter registration, our goal there is to maintain clean and accurate voter registration database. That is obviously required to conduct elections. We need to comply with federal and state laws by maintaining an electronic version of all voter registration rolls. That also serves all registered voters in Sedgwick County. And that's done by internal staff most of the time, but then temporary employees during peak election seasons. We provide customer service and reception of the public. We like to say that we are the EULA of the historic courthouse. We get everybody for every courthouse downtown coming into us and asking us where to go. We answer phones, emails, faxes, and handle walk-in traffic. That is, of course, pretty much everybody, including people not from Sedgwick County that come through there. We do that mostly with internal staff, but then during peak election seasons, we will also use temporary employees, and we also utilize the call center. On the administration side, we have our equipment maintenance. Obviously, it is important for us to maintain our equipment so it functions correctly. So we want to comply with federal and state laws, and we serve all our eligible registered voters. Most of the time that's done with internal staff, but in peak election seasons, again, temporary staff is also employed. Then we have kind of miscellaneous projects. We don't really know which category to put all these in, so we kind of lump them all together. That's our district boundary verifications, petition verifications, voter education outreach, technology research, and then census preparation. Believe it or not, we're already doing census preparation for the 2020 census, and that also serves, and we do that with internal staff. So the election administration side, here is our budget request for 2017 for that. We have a small adjustment down. One of the things that we did is we took our lowest paid full-time employee and we split that into 2 permanent part-time employees, saving the county on benefits, but still giving us the workload of a full-time employee. You can see how that breaks down there. We do have an increase in our commodities over what we anticipate spending in 2016 because we are rolling out new voting equipment. We anticipate we are going to need to buy more extension cords, reconfigure how we pack supplies, that sort of thing. So our elections operations, we have all of our election boards. We have statutory requirements to have all the polls staffed. If anyone knows anybody who wants to work the polls, we are desperately looking for people to hire. We still have about 400 positions open for November, which has me losing sleep at night. I'd like to be much higher on our staffing at this point in the year. We are doing quite a bit of outreach on that, going places, getting word out that we need more election workers. Again, we serve all registered voters, internal staff with temporary employees during peak election season. Our polling places, we have to secure and provide locations for election day and early voting, ensure ADA compliance, make sure we have sufficient space and parking to accommodate voter turnout. And that's pretty much, our stuff is pretty much the same on the end of every slide, so sorry, it's boring. We have our advance by mail program. Obviously in 2017 this will be much smaller because we will not have a large election cycle, so we will only be serving the people who actually request, who send us an application by mail. But we promote early voting options to reduce wait times on election day at polling locations, and we serve anybody who requests a ballot by mail. Candidate services, process all filing documents within statutory deadlines. This includes petitions, which ironically this year we are expecting quite the uptick in that with the increased interest in people filing as independent. The only way they can do that to get on the ballot is by petition. Then we will fulfill data requests and guarantee all candidates are included, obviously, on the appropriate ballot. Compliance with federal and state election laws. So you can see, obviously, because we are not in a presidential election cycle, our election operations budget request is down 55% over what we have for 2016. So this is our breakdown. You can see most of our savings is in election workers and then in commodities. We did include one decision package to get the remaining funding for our voting equipment purchase, which we anticipate doing in 2017. We were able to bring the estimated cost down to $6 million from $7 million, so we are just seeking the additional balance of that of $1.5 million to complete that purchase. We are on the tail end of the RFP process for the voting equipment itself, but then we will still need to do the RFP process for electronic poll books for the polling locations. Kind of some of our efficiency stories. We have moved Election Central. Just a little background. Election Central is where we do ballot layout and programming for the elections, and then where we consolidate and tabulate votes on election night. For a very long time, that has been over in the back corner of the office where it's very difficult for us to be able to be open for the public. So we have moved that across the hall, and we put in a viewing window so that members of the media and any observers who wish to or candidates can stand there on election night and watch the entire process of us tabulating the votes, but that area still stays secure. The only cost of that was about $1,300 to put in the window. So we're hoping that that will open up transparency and give people the opportunity to be more engaged on election night. In 2014, we began using what is called a TriTech machine. This captures the image of signatures and the envelope on returned ballots by mail and uploads them to our voter registration database, which allows us to sit at a desk and verify signatures on a screen instead of having to have trays of ballots sitting at desks, looking at them and manually scanning them one at a time. This also inputs them into the voter registration file in live time so that when we're processing provisionals, If somebody writes on their provisional, I didn't vote by mail, I can actually see whether or not they did, because I have an image of the envelope and I can see if it was rejected or accepted, and it makes it much faster to process provisionals on that end. It also helps us be more compliant with the post-election audits that the Secretary of State's office does. They do multi-state checks to see if somebody voted in more than one state. In 2008 and 2010 and in 2012, we would spend weeks, if not over a month, going through all of those envelopes one at a time, looking for the people who had supposedly voted in more than one location. Now it's in their file. I get the list of people, and within moments I email back the envelope image without having to go through boxes and boxes of records. The other thing that we have started doing is we are attending weekly naturalization ceremonies to conduct voter registration drives. This allows the new citizens to immediately be registered to vote when they walk out that room. So they fill out the voter registration card, and then we scan their naturalization document, and so they have nothing else to complete when they walk out of that ceremony. We conduct that, but we actually we process those cards for Sedgwick County and then other counties across the state as well. And by doing that, we estimate that we've saved approximately around $26,000 since starting that in 2013. It is much more advantageous for us to have an employee there than to try and follow up them with notices and phone calls. And plus, it's just a much more pleasant experience for a newly naturalized citizen. They're very excited. It's very exciting to get to be part of that process, and for them to first thing they get to do is register to vote, and it's pretty cool. So those are kind of our efficiency stories. And so then here is our summary of our budget request for 2017. Is anybody? And I'm sorry if I went through that too fast. I tend to talk fast.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Lehman. Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Peter John?
Commissioner, can you give us a rough idea in terms of the people you're trying to recruit, how many days most of them would be working?
Most of them would just work August and November, so 2 days.
But they'd have to go through training before
they would, yes.
So the total time commitment is?
It depends upon on election day, we ask them to commit about 14 to 15 hours. Set aside that because they cannot leave, but then training is about 2 to 3 hours, so it just depends upon how many days they end up working.
Okay. Let me ask you, how does that number compare to the number we needed in 2014 or 2012?
2012 and 2014, we did not have the anticipated turnout that we're expecting. I don't know if any of you have been watching the national news, but across the country, election offices are experiencing turnouts like they've never seen before. And our voter registration numbers, to give you by this point in the year, in 2008, we had processed 16,000 voter registration applications, and we're almost at 23,000. So we are definitely seeing an increase in interest. So we're just trying to shore that up and have enough staff, because there's nothing that will make your election workers quit faster than being completely overworked for 13 hours straight.
I'm curious, what do you pay them?
We pay them what you determine, which is $120 a day.
Okay.
Which hasn't changed in like over 10 years, so I would love to have that discussion.
For 13 hours. Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of quick questions. So in 2016 and versus 2017, the administration costs are just about the same. Small reduction, but they're roughly the same number. Mm-hmm. That has not changed because of the presidential election at all?
That side is the office administration side, so that's pretty much steady from year to year, and then the election operations is the one that fluctuates up and down for election cycles.
Okay, that makes sense. And then so in 2017, the probably the biggest election would be the November city school in the election. So is this going to go back up again the following year because it's being gubernatorial?
It will, but it will not go up to the level of presidential.
Okay. I'm curious also, for these folks that need to be trained for this, do they get paid for training also?
Yes, they do.
So it's like 2 or 3 hours with the training?
Yes, so they get paid $7.50 an hour that they attend training.
Okay, and then you mentioned 400 people for November. You need that many for August also?
No, August we're only down about 60 people at this point, so we're almost staffed for August. But we get a lot of cancellations, so we like to be way overbooked.
Okay. And I'm just curious, is the number of poll sites, has it changed this year? Is it planning to be the same as it was last year?
It is about the same because we have the same amount of equipment. What we have done is some of our sites that we were concerned about space, we've gone ahead and moved them to bigger locations that have more space. And then what we're doing is we are going to be pushing paper balloting. We're going to be providing a lot more paper ballots, and just trying to offset that line by having a bunch of paper ballot stations set up so that we can make sure we move people through there.
Very good. Is there, what 65 poll sites? Is that what I remember?
64.
64 poll sites right now. And then once we get the new equipment, what's the plan then?
The plan is to, obviously in 17, we probably won't do a big push in 17 to increase because we have a much lower turnout. But then we will start the process in 17 so that by 18 we will begin increasing that. I would like to be closer to 100 or maybe over 100 polling locations.
I think that's great. Good. And then I guess this is being recorded, so I guess I'll like to just make a pitch for yourself there. So if people want to become election workers, how do they do that?
They can either call our office at 660-7100, or they can go to our website, and we have a link there where they can fill out that application. They need to be eligible to register to vote and at least 16 years old. If they are 18, they need to be registered to vote and live in Sedgwick County. The state law did change, so we can have 1/3 of our workers at each site be 16 and 17-year-olds, which is awesome. We've just got to find them. It's hard to do on school day in November to get these. I mean, the kids love to come, but we make the principals sign off on it, and they don't quite jump on that as much. But so we are looking for that. You can be a candidate for precinct committee person and work the polls, but you cannot be a candidate for other office and work in the district where your name is on the ballot. So some of you could work the polls because your name's not on the ballot.
All right, thank you for that. We ought to,
You get $120 for the day.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be working the polls for other reasons, but that's another story.
Yeah, that's fine.
I have worked the polls.
I just recruit everywhere I go.
Yeah, I have. And then so we ought to be trying to blog about this a little bit. I think that as we move forward, I just ask our communications folks to make this a common theme from now till August and November, just because I think it's really important that we try to get the word out that anybody who's concerned about how elections works, I think just encourage them to get involved and see it firsthand. It's a great experience anyway. It's you get to meet some neat people and it gives you. I've been involved in these a long time ago. It's been a long time since I've done that, but before you were in your position for sure. But anyway, but it gave me a lot of confidence in the process personally when I got to see how it works. So I really enjoyed that, and I thought it was a good experience, and I would encourage anybody to get involved in that. It's a good thing to do. All right. Well, I don't have any other questions. Commissioners, Commissioner Ranslow, did you have questions? No.
No, you asked a question about the number of polling places.
Very good. All right, Commissioners, any other questions? I don't see anything else. I appreciate your time.
Sure, thanks.
And thank you for a good presentation.
All right.
Let's see. We have a scheduled break planned, and I don't know if we want to. Do you know who's going to be presenting to us on the Division of Public Safety? You will be, okay. How much time do you need before you're ready to go?
5 minutes, maybe.
Okay. If you don't mind, I don't know if we can keep going ahead of schedule or not. Who's doing a presentation on Division of Culture and Recreation? Oh, they're not here yet. Pardon me? Ron is here, okay. Well, I'll tell you what, rather than just taking extra time, I think what I'd like to do is let's go and take about a 10-minute break, if that's okay with everyone. And we'll come back about 5 minutes till 2. 5 minutes till 2 o'clock, and we'll just press on from there and see how much we can cut out of our schedule today. All right, thank you, everybody. All right, we are now back from our break, and appreciate everybody getting back on time. Mr. Manager, I guess we're ready for the next phase in our briefings here.
All right, next is Marvin Duncan, the Director of Public Safety.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Director's Office, and the mission for Public Safety Division overall is to protect, preserve, enhance life, health, and property, and safety of all the people in Sedgwick County, and we do it through these departments within the division. Those that are highlighted today in the bold color are the ones we're going to cover today. This is part one, and then I'll be back next week with part two with Regional Forensic Science and Department of Corrections. The EMSS mission and services, and for those who don't know it, EMSS is Dr. Galloway in the back and his folks, and they are embedded in my director office budget. Dr. Galloway came to us last August, and he's been busy putting together programs and trying to plot the future where he wants to go with EMSS and EMS and first responder care. He has basically identified two programs, clinical practice and just programs, and we'll go into those in a little more depth. So his purpose, his EMS's purpose, is to be here for medical oversight of pre-hospital patient care. And primarily the people that get his services are the first responders, who then turn around and give it to the citizens of the county and the visitors to the county. The value he adds, his department adds, is it legalizes the medical care delivery, providing pre-hospital care. And it's delivered, all of his functions are delivered by internal staff. For the 2017 budget request, these are the items that will be covered in the property tax funds. Clinical practice program, he'll offer the oversight and protocols and quality assurance and advancement. And in those bullets are his proposed metrics that he'll start building to go with those programs. His next item is just programs, and you can see there that a big one is education, delivering systems level education. Critical specialty care transport, we'll talk some more about that later. This is the transport of the sickest of the sick, the most critically injured, as we move them from hospitals or care centers on the outside of the outreaches of the county into the major hospital care centers downtown. Another big program is credentialing, making sure our folks are qualified, ready to go, and have the proper techniques. And then individualized care, we have a efficiency that we'll talk about later that kind of shows you what individualized care will do. So together, Dr. Gallagher and my budget are located on this page, and sometimes we wrestle over who gets what, but I make sure Dr. Gallagher wins. And then this is our budget broken down by category. And the equipment down there, the $180,000, we'll show you here in a little bit the items that he bought with some of that money last year. The next department is the Emergency Communications and Management. Their mission is to provide people of Sedgwick County the vital communications link. And as you recall, last year we combined emergency management with emergency communications. So that's the last part of their mission statement, is to respond, recover, and mitigate disasters. These are the programs listed there at the bottom for emergency communications and management. The first program, administration, their purpose is to support the operations of emergency communications. That's 86 FTEs. What's the value? They manage the resources, the operations, and the budget for emergency communications, and that's all delivered by internal staff. The Emergency Communications Center is what you think about when you hear emergency communications. It's the 911 center. Obviously, they're there to, their purpose is to answer all the emergency calls and provide dispatching services for over 31 public safety agencies in the county. They are available to all citizens and visitors of Sedgwick County. That's who they serve. Their value is it gives us a common number, one number to call when you need help. It's delivered by internal staff. The next program is the emergency telephone service. That's a fee that's collected, 911 fee, and it can be used for emergency call receiving and purchasing equipment, and we can also do some personnel training, and you'll see some decision packages later on where we use that fund to fund these. Who receives the benefit from this fee? It's all of the emergency communications people, and they pass that on in form of service to our citizens. The equipment and training that's needed to provide that high-quality 911 service. Who delivers that? The equipment serviced and maintained by a combination of internal staff, and then we also have external vendors that help us maintain that equipment. The next program in that department is emergency management, and they take care of the operations center. I think you're all familiar with that. The outdoor warning devices. They oversee several volunteer programs like the Radio Amateur Civil and Emergency Service, or RACES, Emergency Support Unit, Fire Reserve, and Canine Search and Rescue. They provide this service to the citizens and visitors and disaster response agencies. Their value is that we're required by law to have an emergency manager, and Dan Pugh, sitting in the back, serves that role. His services, his part of that department services are delivered by internal staff and volunteers. The next item is under emergency management as well. That's the grants that they manage, and their purpose to help in planning, public health preparedness, and the Volunteer Medical Reserve Corps. As you may also recall, when we brought risk or emergency management under communications, we also combined them with the emergency management over in the health department. So they're providing services to all the citizens. They support all hazard planning and public health preparedness and response. Their value is the grants increase those capabilities for them to respond to disaster responses. And it is delivered by internal staff and volunteers as well. Here's a look at the services and some of the metrics that emergency communications provides. And so for 2017 property tax funds, their primary reason for being there is, of course, to answer and dispatch emergency calls. They do very well trying to get most of those calls answered in a timely manner. But when you take 2% times 600,000, that's quite a few calls there that we don't always get to in time. So there'll be times when they go into the queue. Next is the Emergency Management Operations and Training Program, and those are the 2017 property tax funds that will, and some of their metrics that they measure in maintaining those services for our citizens. You'll see down at the bottom the warning system for the emergency alert system, and that's the sirens primarily that you hear throughout the county. I think there's 147. And so you'll see in the budget, usually there's about $100,000 in there a year to help take care of the ones that fall off get blown off the poles by storms, or sometimes they're involved in accidents and we have to replace them. Otherwise, we're going after the oldest. And we also look at areas that don't have any protection. It may have grown over the last decade that might need a siren in that community. So here are the non-tax funds in what they provide. Again, the emergency management grants for health, medical, and EM performance grant. And then emergency communications, the operations and training, where we use the 911 tax fund to support some of those items. Here's the summary of the Emergency Communications and Management budget for 2017 request. General Fund, 911 Tax Fund, and the Emergency Management Grants. And the Emergency Management Grants, that large, that 26% change, that's when we move the health grants, emergency management health grants, over into this budget. Here's a summary by all funds, their categories. The transfer out, that negative 13%, we think that's just because the $100,000 hasn't been put in there for next year to do the sirens. I'd like to have Laura come up next and talk about a few metrics and some of the challenges that she faces in 911.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Laura Forshee. I'm your Director of 911 and Emergency Management. We are in a place in 911, both as an industry and as a county, where we are just have an ever-growing call volume. This is based on cell phones. As you know, they're very prevalent. Most people are getting rid of their home phones, and so where you used to be out and about and you'd have an emergency and you'd wait till you got home, now they're calling, and they're calling quite a bit. You can see that our call volume is increasing. This is call volume both on the phone and on the radio, 17% in 7 years. And what has that done, or what that has done for us, is that we have more calls coming in than we're able to answer with the current staffing that we have. We have calls that are regularly going into a call queue, and those calls are sitting and waiting on a dispatcher or a call taker to be available to answer it, to figure out what kind of help they need and what kind of crisis they're in. This is happening every day. This is an average of hourly calls in queue. We have some peak times that we could attack with more staffing. We have done things internally to mitigate this and to add staffing levels. We have minimum staffing levels for call takers now that we've never had before. We're doing some efficiency exercises in doing a non-emergency call queue and triaging those calls and moving them off if they're non-emergency. But we still have calls that are waiting in a queue to be picked up, and we don't know right now when those are waiting if it's a house on fire or if it's a parking violation, and that to us is concerning. One of the things that has happened, though, in trying to address this with our current staffing level is that we're seeing a lot of overtime, and that's ever increasing. We are on track this year to meet our overtime levels that we had last year, if not exceeding those. And those have a toll both on us personally as dispatchers that are taking time away from our family, but more importantly, financially as a county, we're incurring those overtime costs. I'm quickly going to run into a situation where I don't have the salary savings to cover those overtime costs, and so that's going to be a problem we're going to be facing in the next couple of years. Really, what we're concerned about is we are trying to be efficient and effective as an industry in addressing this ever-growing call volume, but we have done all that we feel like we can do, and we're continuing to search for innovative ways to deliver services at the level that the citizens of Sedgwick County deserve. But we are at a point where we need to ask for some help and to ask for some staffing to address this call volume at the rate that it's coming in. As we're growing as a community, I know you gentlemen have heard from other public safety entities who say that they have ever-growing call volume. That does start with dispatch, and I would ask you very respectfully to remember that it comes in through us, it goes out through us in the dispatching, and we are very busy and trying to stay on top of it, but definitely need some help. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to address you. Do you have any questions on any of those numbers? I went through them quickly, I know.
Commissioner Ranzau?
Yeah, can you go back to the call volume? It was one of the first slides.
Yes.
Now you said, okay, via phone and radio. What do you mean
Correct.
by radio?
Over the radio, when the patrol men and women are out there and they're calling in, maybe you're at a fire station and somebody's walked in with chest pains, or you're pulling over a vehicle, we take those calls for service also, and that's a workload for us as well.
Are we still having a problem with butt dialing or whatever you
Yes, unfortunately we are, and we've been really talking about that at an industry level, and we've done something innovative in Sedgwick County where we have changed the way that we address those and trying to decrease our call volume. But as an industry, we're struggling with how to do that. We're doing more public education, and it's just not been effective thus far.
I mean, roughly, what's the percentage of those that end up not really calls?
Very few. I don't have the exact percentage, but what we're finding, and this is how we made a decision of how to address them, is that if it's a hang-up, an abandoned call, we aren't calling them back, because if they were able to answer on call back, they're already calling back in to call us. And we just found we had so many of them that were not anything. It's in my purse, it's in my pocket, my kid has it, whatever, that we had to make a decision to do something about it.
Commissioner Peterjohn?
Thank you. Question, I'd like to try and focus in a little bit on the overtime.
Yes.
How much of that is kind of routine that you can plan during the week, and how much of it's driven by 4th of July or New Year's Eve type of special, somewhat predictable, but relatively infrequent type of special? We know the call volume is going to go up.
Actually, I would say that less of it is from those predictable events, because we can start shuffling days off around. We have suspended training during those events, things like that, to staff up our call center without taking or using overtime money to do so. It's the routine summer vacation, I'm sick, things like that. We can't ever leave a console open, and so that's where we're seeing most of that. The routine events are the ones that are easier to address. It's the ones you can't plan for or predict.
Okay, because obviously it's one of the trade-offs on personnel, and I was interested in terms of, we've had a lot of discussions, particularly 4th of July and special calls and that. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Ranzau.
Sorry, I have some more questions.
That's okay.
So you have call takers and dispatchers.
Correct.
Do all calls go to call takers first, or can they go to dispatcher?
All dispatchers are call takers. All call takers are not dispatchers. So the call takers are our first frontline force, and the calls go to them first, and they cascade from there as we have people available.
So why don't we transition all the call takers to dispatchers? Does it not erase a step and maybe make it a little more efficient, or what?
We used to start out as a dispatcher. When I started, you started out as a dispatcher, and you learned the whole gamut right out of the gate. And we found that we had higher turnover rates from that, because it's a lot of information to take in at first. So we allow them to come in as the call taker, master that skill, or master it enough to add on another layer of multitasking. It lets them take bite-sized chunks of the whole puzzle.
So eventually they can, I guess what I'm saying is, do we have positions that we say are only call takers and will never be dispatchers?
I have not personnel that will be only call takers, but positions, yes. I have a certain number of positions that can only be call takers, but as I hire in as a call taker, then I would promote up to a dispatcher and move through the promotional scheme that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I guess I'm saying, why not allow, I mean, would you ever get to the point that you have all the dispatchers you need and someone who can progress up, and they have to put on hold for that because they're in a call taker position?
Could we? Yes. It would be a very pleasant staffing level for me to do that.
Okay.
But realistically, because of overtime, stress of the job, just attrition, things like that, I've never been in the position where we've had somebody that could promote up to a dispatcher, yet I didn't have positions available.
Okay, well, that's, I didn't want
I
to put
would
an
love to have
arbitrary
that
barrier
problem.
to let someone be a dispatcher if they're ready to, right?
Right,
Because that actually
right.
helps you if you have.
Absolutely, yes.
But
yes.
but then it would be a cost issue, but not as much as a whole new position. That's what I'm getting.
Right.
We probably need to have a meeting. I want to find out about nationwide trends and
Absolutely.
data as far as call queuing and all this other stuff. So
We are, I will say, in Kansas, very unique, just population size, call volume size. That's, and speaking to my counterparts in other agencies in Kansas and how they address it, it's very, nobody knows what to do with it because nobody else is experiencing it. Talking to my counterparts nationwide, they've talked about having to ramp up their staffing levels. And there's different ways to set up your comm center, and we could have a whole other meeting on it, and I could go on all day. I know.
I'd like to learn a little more.
But yeah, I'm
probably
separating
beyond
out tasks more clearly, but I would be very happy to give you more information on that.
Okay. Thanks.
Anything
And I
else?
apologize, I kind of missed your last name.
I'm sorry, it's Forshee, Forshee. I'm a dispatcher. I talk fast. And,
That's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
I listen fast.
Yeah, well, good.
Director
We'd be a good
Forshee,
pair.
so I'm
Yes.
saying that correctly. Hey, well, thank you for the presentation. I do have a couple of quick questions. If you look at slide 23, there was a huge peak in overtime in 2012, and then it went back down kind of to a normal trend there. What happened there?
That was our summer of 12s. We had an issue in 2012, and I'm not sure what situation created it, but we were very low on staffing, and so we went to 4 12s and an 8 as a mandatory staffing plan, and so everybody had overtime built in every week, whether they wanted it or not. And it was a business decision because we just did not have enough personnel.
Okay, so that makes sense. And so what's happening right now, are you able to provide, I guess, new employees, new trainees, and keep up with the demand for the positions that are open? Are you able to keep up with it right now?
We are in a really good place right now, I'm happy to say, and knock on wood. But we are running 3 to 4 training classes a year, and as we lose people, we lose people because shift work is hard. They want Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and I can't argue with that. But as we're losing them, we're hiring in just as quickly and getting them trained. The training process is a long process. Of course, if you're taking 911 calls, you don't want anybody just thrown into the console. And so that is our biggest hurdle, but it's just the cost of doing business because we want them to be well trained. But yeah, we are absolutely being able to hire them just as quickly as we have the positions open.
Curiously, how long is the training?
To be a call taker, it is 12 weeks of classroom training, and that's just learning the policy and procedures and how the mechanics of it, and then they do another 4 weeks of on-the-job training with a trainer sitting next to them as they're actually doing it and getting that daily feedback.
Okay, I'm looking at the decision package that came to us. It looks like you're asking for 5 new FTE.
I am, yes.
And that's what, about a 6% increase over normally it sounds like 80 positions right now.
I have 86,
86, and you're gonna, okay, so I see 6 of those are administration, and then 80 of those are communications
Yes,
center.
yes.
So the 5 would be for communication center?
Yes, absolutely.
So 85 over 80, that's about a 6% increase. Do you have workstations already set up for these folks?
We do, yes. We do.
Okay. 'Cause I think the workstations are pretty expensive as well.
Absolutely, they are. Thankfully, my predecessors thought ahead and have given me room to grow.
Okay. Does that still leave some resources that haven't been used? Even if you get the 5, you still have some workstations not being utilized?
We do. We rotate through workstations. So, yeah, there's always a couple that are open. And then we also have the ability during peak events such as, with the new phone system, which is another decision package, have the ability during peak events such as 4th of July to staff both our backup site and our main site with call takers so that we have, those events where we have more staffing than general, we can manage that and we have the room.
And those 5 folks, the decision package is about $270,000 increase to the budget for those 5 FTEs. For us to keep that in mind, I guess.
Yes.
All right. Well, I don't have any other questions right now. Appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
I'm glad to meet you, Director Forshee.
Thank you.
Saying
It's
that right?
My pleasure. Yes. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your coming to make the presentation today.
Thank you very much. I
I guess
appreciate
back
it.
to Mr. Duncan.
All right.
Director Duncan. Thank you, Laura.
Our next department we'll discuss is EMS, and they're committed to providing quality out of hospital health care for their mission statement. Their first program on there is administration, accounts receivable, and training, and their purpose is to provide the support and oversight and strategic leadership for that department. And who receives the benefit of all that are their FTEs, the folks assigned to EMS, which there are about 175. And the value that they provide is they're responsible for policy and goal development for the department, fiscal management, and education, training their employees, some QA, some QI, medical protocol compliance, and they manage the ambulance fleet, which is takes some time in itself. They have a lot of equipment on board, and they have to work with fleet management to get them repaired. Medical supplies is another issue. I don't know if you've ever been to see their where they store all their medical supplies, but it's quite an operation. And then they have all the stations left to care and maintain for as well. And this is all done with internal staff. So that's the administration part. Here's the operations part, the meat and potatoes of EMS. 15 stations located throughout Wichita and Sedgwick County, and 19 peak time ambulances. They also have special operations, deployable assets, disaster trailer, mobile incident command post, and they also have a bike medic team as well that they use during events downtown. Their purpose is to provide the emergent and non-emergent advanced life support. Who receives that? All the citizens and visitors to Sedgwick County that need it. And then their value is to ensure public will receive a safe, effective, patient-centered, timely, equitable emergency ambulance service with over 43,000 transports in 2015, and it's all provided by internal staff. Here's a look at the programs that will be funded by the property tax funds for 2017. Number one there is the emergent responses. Those are the life-threatening, high-acuity calls that they receive. You also see the performance goals down below there. The urban, delta, and echo response time still maintained within the goal that they've set for themselves. However, as you see, as we move farther out into the outer parts of the county, the suburban delta and echo response times don't meet the requirements that we had established for ourselves. The next program is the non-emergent. The service level is the same as above. And these are the scheduled transports where we move from hospital campus to hospital campus. And those are a little more controllable. Here's the EMS summary for their budget, pretty flat. And here it is by funds. The transfer out that you see down toward the bottom, the $210,000, that was to repair a roof in EMS Post 8 up north on 53rd Street. Now I'll ask Scott Hadley to come up and talk about a few slides of data for you. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Pleasure to be here. Hopefully over the next few minutes and a couple slides, we'll be able to paint you a portrait and tell a story about our operations, how we're currently using the resources you entrust to us to serve the community, and one that supports a couple decision packages that you'll hear about a little bit later. First is a slide that you've all seen, or some variety of that, over the past several years. The first slide in the blue bars that what I put up there is our emergent call demand. Those are those calls to 911 that go to Aloris folks that are having chest pain, difficulty breathing, motor vehicle accidents, and those types of things. You can see that trend line is going up fairly pronounced at a historical rate of about 3 to 4% a year. And last year, in fact, was a little bit abnormal. We went up almost 6% from 2014 to 2015. You also notice at the bottom of that particular chart, there's been a 37% increase in our demand since 2008 through 2015 in the overall call demand, and I'll bring that up in just a moment. But that's the stars that you see there above, a couple of the blue bars in 2011 and 2015, are when you approved additional resources. We added one 12-hour, 7-day-a-week resource in 2011. And we added another 12-hour, 7-day-a-week resource in 2015. And I'll explain a little bit later in another slide how those resources are being allocated to serve our community. The tan-colored bars that you see in front of you are the non-emergent. As Mr. Duncan alluded to, those are those scheduled transports. If they're at a nursing facility, they need to go into the hospital or another facility for a test or an evaluation that's not provided at that facility. It's non-urgent, it can be held, and they schedule those transports. We provide those as well. They are going up, but not as pronounced as the emergent call demand. And the top bar is both of those together. The tan line and the blue line added up, the blue bar adds up to our total call demand, which you see in 2015 was a little over 64,000 total responses for both emergent and non-emergent in the community. The purple bar you see there is how we staff, and the peak demand staffing is mentioned. I'll explain that in the next chart. We're just going to get an idea of how we staffed and where we allocated those particular resources. I'll show you here in just a second. Are there any questions on this particular slide? Very good.
Now, these are calls. Do you have transports?
I do have transports. We transported a little over 43,000 calls. I don't have that chart in there. I can provide that to you. But we transported a little over 43,000 folks last year in 2015. That is going up as well and trending the same as our call demand. It's just proportional. About 70% we transport on those that we respond to, and that's been historically the same over many, many years. Yes. This next chart we're going to go over is going to show you temporal demand, and the definition of temporal demand is call volume over time. When are the calls occurring and how many, given a 24-hour period? A couple of things about this model. This has nothing to do with where, which is geospatial demand, and I want to make that quite clear. It's not where the calls are at, but when the calls are occurring. The second point about this model that we're using, and we've used for many years now, is it was developed for private, for-profit ambulance services that are in high-performing, busy urban centers. And the reason they developed that is because they want to know how they can efficiently and effectively allocate resources. If they have too many resources on staff, that costs them money. If they have too few, that costs them money because they're not hitting performance goals that they are adhered to as far as their performance-based contracts. So they developed this model to help them be the most economically and operationally efficient as possible. So with that, the big blue-gray areas you see is call volume over time. That's 2015 aggregate data by hour of day. And you can see on the far right-hand side, as we go across horizontally, it starts at midnight and goes through the 11 o'clock hour. And as we plug that data in, we look at a couple of things. What time are calls occurring in our system? This is very predictable. It's reproducible. If you lived in Dallas, Texas, in Tampa, Florida, you would see a similar design horizontally. As we go through the overnight hours, it's not as busy a call demand as it is at 3 in the afternoon. The dotted line that I just put up there is where we should be staffed to based on the model. Based on the model of what we have as far as our historic call demand that we've plugged into the model, this is where how many peak time ambulances we should be staffed to on a regular basis. The next line, the dark purple or dark red line, is how we're staffed today. As you can see on the vertical axis, we staff overnight at 13 ambulances during the overnight hours. And it's starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, we start adding resources as call demand starts increasing. We do it again at 10 o'clock and we do it again at midnight. And as you can see, we try to match our resources with the demand, and that's what it is as far as peak demand staffing, which I'll show you in a minute. It's not the same as some services staff 24 hours a day. Are any questions to this point? Does that make sense, how we staff demand? I'd liken that to Walmart. If you go grocery shopping at 2 in the morning, it's not very busy. They probably have one checker on staff to check out guests. 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon, they have quite a bit staffed up. So they ramp up and staff based on the demand, which is more efficient than having a bunch of staff at night that's just sitting there at checkout centers not doing anything. Same thing with the ambulances. It doesn't make sense to have more ambulances overnight than it does during the day.
So one of my questions is, since we have 15 brick-and-mortar stations, is that correct?
That's correct.
15 stations, and so that means that 2 of them are basically not manned at a certain part of the night?
They're all manned.
Oh, they're all manned.
They're all manned, yes.
But you only have 13 ambulances available
in the overnight hours, correct.
That's what I'm saying. Okay.
Yes, yes.
well, 13 means there's probably at least a couple of stations that don't.
Well, our post 20 down at our office on Stillwell is staffed during the day, and one of those peak demand trucks, we don't have it staffed overnight, and I'll show you why here in a minute.
And then, of course, in the the peak part of this chart, when you have 16, you have one more ambulance out there available than we have stations, and so there's 16 ambulances available in the afternoon.
We have 19 available in the
19
available in the
I'm
afternoon.
just counting this up. So
So you look at the vertical axis, it's about right under the 20 bar on the dark line.
Thank you very much.
You
That
bet.
helps me a little bit.
You bet.
Thank you very much. All right, good. Keep going, please.
Yep. And then the green dash bar I put up there this is what it would look like if we staffed like some agencies do 24 hours a day. You would see excess capacity in the overnight hours, which is inefficient and ineffective. During the day, you would see we'd be severely short-staffed, meaning what that would mean is citizens would be waiting on an ambulance because we wouldn't have enough to provide service if we just staffed a flat 16 across the board, which equals 19 peak. So I'll explain that a little bit more here in a minute. And as Mr. Duncan will allude to, we're asking for staffing. That's the pink line that popped up there is where we're asking for, if you approve the FTEs and the additional decision packages that we submitted for, this is where we would be staffed to in 2017 with the pink line, which does get us above. It doesn't quite get us to the staff to line, but it does get us closer to it and does get us above the pink demand, which our models right now, there are calls going on during certain hours, more calls than we have ambulances staffed. The next slide, kind of want to compare it. So how do you compare that to other agencies and stuff? So we looked at a variety of things, as you can see in the green highlighted table here about population and square miles and those types of things. We'll go over that in great detail. Some of that information you already know in the blue column with Sedgwick County EMS, our population, square miles, call volume. And Commissioner Renz, I'll ask about transport volume is there in that blue chart. How many ambulances, and why it says 16, I think I need to explain that because I just said we had 19. We do have 19 that we peak staff. The 6 that we peak staff during the day work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if I would staff those 24 hours a day, there would only be 3 of them for a total of 16. Still 72 hours, but we allocate them during peak times. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay, well, we can explain further, so don't want you to be confused. So we compare that to our friends up in Johnson County. And the reason we selected Johnson County on a couple different reasons comparable for EMS. One of the things, they're an urban center. Population density is fairly similar to ours. They're a government third service-based model as we are, and they receive tax dollars as we do. So as you can see there, and I'll put up the gray chart, we have about 13% less population than Johnson County. Our geographical coverage is about 110% more that we're responsible to cover compared to them. We cover 67% more call volume than they do. We transport 60% more patients than they do. We have 6.25% less resources than they do. And we have a few more FTE than they do. Our overall budget's $1.7 million less. Our commodities budget is $87,000 less. Our revenues are about $6.7 million more than theirs. Our cost per transport, our average revenue transport's about $51 more. They receive about $9.2 million more in tax than we do, and you can see the cost per capita compared to Sedgwick County. Hopefully that tells you that we're being efficient with the tax dollars that you entrust to us and our resources. Operationally and financially, we are being extremely efficient with our use of resources in Sedgwick County.
Commissioner Peterson?
If I could jump in with a quick question.
Sure.
Just to make sure, as close as this comparison is Johnson County countywide? I mean, I'm thinking like the fire district where, sometimes there might be multiple services.
Right.
Johnson County is countywide like we
They
are.
provide all the 911 services to Johnson County. They do not provide the non-emergent transports for Johnson County. That's contracted.
Okay.
But they're responsible for all the 911 emergent calls for that particular county.
Okay, because, well, that would be a question that would come in on some of the other side of the equation. I was curious, the previous slide you had continues to show that we've got, and Chairman Howell raised it in terms of 13 stations, or maybe 14 stations overnight. When you talk about the staffing level, is that account of the staffing at the station? Is the number of people per vehicle and everything?
Two, yes.
It's going to be two for each under all. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, please continue.
Okay. And again, this last slide I'll share with you is tax subsidy. What do other like departments around the country and close to us get as far as tax support to support their EMS agency? All of these are governmental models. They all receive tax support. They're third service municipal ambulance services. And you can see what we receive per capita, and you can see what Butler County receives per capita for ambulance support for their agency, Wake County, North Carolina, Johnson County, and on forth. So again, I think we're being very efficient and effective with the resources that are allocated, but again, demand is outpacing the current level of resources we have to continue to provide care for our community. So that is our rationale for asking you to support us with some more resources so we can continue to provide that quality care to the community.
Looking back at the previous chart, I actually have a question. It's strange to me, okay, slide 32. Strange to me that we have roughly, let's say 70,000 less people in Johnson County, but we had not quite double the number of calls. Is there some explanation as to why that would be? Those are converging ideas there.
Right. One explanation is they do not provide the non-emergent transport for Johnson County. AMR contracts to provide that particular service for them. So that accounts for part of that mismatch, if you will. But if you look at just the emergent call volume, and I'll go back to the first chart I showed you on the emergent call volume here. Last year we had 57,193 emergent calls to 911, and they have a little over 38,000.
So there's more than just the non-emergency transport.
Correct.
Driving this.
I wish I could answer your question as why more people call 911 here than they do in Johnson County. I can't answer that, but.
And I guess we also, I mean, one of the takeaways, we do assess a fee for people that we transport, and so we're doing it depends on your perspective, I suppose, but I'll say we're doing a good job of assessing those fees and collecting those dollars.
Yeah, and we have, as you know, in 2011 we imposed a rate increase. It hadn't had one in 8 years at that point. We also did another rate increase at January 1 of 15 and January 1 of 16 to try to recuperate as much as we can from the users of the EMS service.
And you said we transport roughly 70%. Do we know how many, what the percentage that they would transport? Again, assuming that their fees are less or they collect less.
Yeah, it's around 27,000 transports, and talking to the chief up there for 2015, and they responded to a little over 38,000 calls.
So what percentage of those were transported then?
27,000, I can
so
get you the,
sounds like it's
Lindsay's got a
about
calculator out, so she's going to bail me out.
I'm going to guess it's about the same percentage then,
Yeah.
which is interesting to me, but okay.
70%.
70%.
Okay. Good guess, huh? Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, please continue. I might have another question on that chart here as I sit here and think about this, but please keep going.
Okay. And I believe Mr. Duncan.
Good. Thanks, Scott.
Next department, our last department we'll talk about today is Fire District. Obviously, their mission is to protect life and property and minimize the impact of fire. Here are a list of their programs: administration, shared maintenance, prevention, and operations. Administration, their purpose is command and control of the district services and programs. Their providing that service to 85,000 citizens or so in the district, and their value is that oversight of carrying out the mission of the fire department, and that's all done with internal staff. The shared maintenance, you may recall several years ago we put fire maintenance down at Fleet, and so they work in the Fleet facility. There's 2 mechanics there, and their main purpose is to maintain the fire fleet, and the people that receive those services are at all their fire services when they get the fixed equipment ready to go. And so their value is they do a timely, efficient maintenance service for the fire apparatus, and that's all, again, done with internal staff, 2 people. Fire prevention establishes the policies and procedures for interpreting and enforcing the fire codes and doing fire safety evaluations of buildings. They could also arrest you, too, if you are the cause of the fire. And then anyone in the fire district is eligible to receive those services, and the value is to provide services to the public to help prevent disasters. And that's all done with internal staff as well. Operations, again, the meat of the department is the fire suppression and medical response is their purpose. Again, 85,000 citizens or so in the fire district. Their value is they protect life and property, and it's done with internal staff. And there you'll see a small chart breaks down the fire calls that they had for 2015. With the majority of them are going to be the medical EMS type fire calls. Here's what's covered in their property tax for 2017. The requested budget will allow them to operate at the same level that they are now. There's still 8 positions that remain frozen in the fire district. 6 of those positions are firefighters. Administration program, again, providing that oversight, and their responses are within 92% of their time or better. They look at all the fire metrics, and then they want to measure 92% of meeting those for the administration. The shared maintenance guys provide that oversight, again, of fixing the fire apparatus and staff vehicles. Their productivity rate is 94%, which is rather high, but they put in a lot of overtime. Fire prevention, continuing on under property tax. Again, they look, or they help other firefighters look at 100% of all the fires to try to determine what the cause was. Operations, the 9 fire stations are strategically placed throughout the county, and you'll see there on the bottom of that slide what their performance indicators are. So in summary for their budget, a little less in the 2017 request than what we had in 2016, and over here you'll see why, is their program to buy less equipment in 2017. We'll talk a little bit about efficiencies now. EMSS and EMS, working with private physician. We had a high call volume patient with special needs, and they were calling up to 6 times a day for transports to ER, and sometimes multiple different ERs in one day. And so those folks, led by EMS and EMSS, met with the primary care provider for that person, and I think Doc Gallagher helped them establish a protocol for that person where EMS didn't always transport the patient, encouraged the patient to call their primary care provider, which reduced their transports and reduced their time on the task. So within a short time, they avoided over 23 transports with an estimated savings there of over $8,000. Now, we're not going to stop there. There are other people out there just like that, but we have to have the people and the time to invest in figuring out what these people need, so we can do the right thing for them and the right thing for us. In emergency communications and management, I think Alora talked a little bit about the 911 calls stacking up in the queue, and they created a prioritization project that allows the call takers to quickly triage the calls, moves the non-emergent calls to a separate staff so that the emergent, more important calls can be worked first. Although there's no tangible dollar amount there that we can measure, it does allow fire and EMS, law enforcement, to get to their calls quicker. EMS has several efficiencies over the years. Ambulance remount program, most of you are probably familiar with that. We still average about 4 a year, saving about $240,000 in annual savings. Back in 2013, EMS redid the way they worked their classifications on people, and they reduced that acting officer pay, saving them about $20,000 annually. And here's small amounts of money can lead to a lot. EKG patches, paying $12 cents each now instead of 24 cents. But when you use 200,000 of them annually, you're talking real money. So there's $24,000 estimated savings a year. Again, IV fluid and tubing, they switched from that process to IV lock on the majority of their patients, and you can see the cost breakdown there. And eventually, when you work through all that formula, you got $46,000 in savings a year. So overall, EMS, with those few efficiencies, have an annual savings of about or over $330,000 a year. The fire department efficiencies, the online burn permits used to be firefighters had to spend 15 to 30 minutes filling out the paperwork. The citizen had to go to the fire station to fill out the paperwork. And so the new method now lets them do it online, and the citizens don't have to make trips to the station. And the online system also does all the tracking of the permits, which were harder to do under the old manual system. So they got some savings there for their firemen for the year. Next, we'll go into the decision packages, and I've arranged them by page number for you. What you'll see at the top of the decision package is you'll see the number 5. That was the fifth priority for the division. That's critical care transport, and you've heard us mention it earlier. The emergence of these specialty hospitals now are driving an increase in the number of the sickest of the sick patients to transfer them into main campus when they run into trouble. And originally, when we sat down with EMS, we thought we could handle it in-house. But then we got into the fall months, and there was a lot of times we couldn't even manage the peak ambulances, let alone break out somebody to go be a critical care transport person. So that's the reason we're asking for 4 FTEs. And I think we have a show and tell. Are they still out there? They are. We'll show you an example of what a critical care transport patient would look like. What we would do is we basically take paramedics, and Dr. Gallagher would increase their training to handle some of the specialized equipment for those critical care people. It would be one person in a small SUV that would meet up with the ambulance and provide the extra care that we need. That way we avoid having another ambulance, and we avoid having a 2-man crew. We'd only have one person show up with the 2-man ambulance crew and help transport this type of patient. And this is some of the equipment that EMSS bought last year. If you recall, that $180,000 of equipment that we showed on our summary.
This is some of the equipment that you guys approved before this morning on a patient. We had one of our most senior field supervisors who's been doing this for over 20 years was unable to get a breathing tube into the patient's lungs. I was called out into the field, brought this device, and in a single attempt was able to have a breathing tube in place, and his oxygenation levels went from 25% to 100% immediately thereafter.
And what happens if you don't do that correctly?
If you stop breathing,
Now, if you don't put the tube in correctly, you talked about this earlier.
If not incorrectly to us means the breathing tube goes into the stomach. So if it goes into the lungs, you continue to get oxygen and have a chance. If it goes into your stomach, you die.
Well, this is pretty important stuff then. Thank you.
It is, and this equipment has already been purchased. But until we can get the personnel to operate it, it's left to myself and then my office staff.
Dr. Gallagher, would you please introduce your two colleagues here as well? I'd like to know who they are and what they do as well.
Absolutely. So Colonel Winters, Malachi Winters is our program director. And Derek Ruddle, Colonel Ruddle is our clinical practice manager. So when you look at the design of our department, we have two branches from my position down, clinical practice and programs. These guys head it up. They're also going to be the primary instructors for our critical care paramedics. They've both been trained, and because of that, we can now offer the training in our office.
Okay, so this looks to me like it's a lot of equipment here, and these guys they instruct on how to use all this.
Correct.
Is that what I understand? Okay, that's fantastic, and it looks like a lot of stuff, and it looks like it's really important. My interpretation would be when you have a really critical patient that they would be anxious just to get that person to the hospital as quickly as possible. But I think what I see here is two uses. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the uses, of course, is to stabilize the patient before you transport, if I understand it correctly, and the other is to transport people who are already under care at a hospital, maybe transfer to a different hospital for some reason. They've got to get a different type of resource. Maybe it's a pediatric patient or something like that. You've got to go from one hospital to another. So you guys are involved in stabilizing that patient to make that transport. Is that correct?
Correct. So there's two approaches to this. And I'm passing around, and I'm afraid I can't submit for security reasons, is a picture of this equipment in use on a real patient. And that's de-identified. You can't see who they are, but that's what it looks like in real action when it's not a simulator. Okay. So to answer the question, there's two branches. There's primary 911 response. That's what I did this morning. And then there's inter-facility transports, which is what you were just describing. So it has to go from a smaller hospital to a larger hospital, needs a service that isn't available. The team with the 4 people that were asking for would fulfill both of those roles. It is unrealistic to think that we would have these guys in action at all times. There just isn't this level of call available. And so they would do 911 calls, they would do transfer calls, but they would also be able to participate with my office in things like training, looking at areas of our system that can be improved upon. They would help with our quality review processes, and they would also be able to go out into the field and deal with those super users that Mr. Duncan was talking about, because it's not as simple as turning off somebody's 911 privileges. You have to go out, you have to find these people, you have to figure out the plan, you have to build that plan, implement the plan, and that takes a lot of time. These guys are high-level field providers that would be able to fulfill that task as well. And then, of course, when this call comes in, they can stop what they're doing and respond.
I might ask you to go ahead and use Chris Cronus's microphone, because I know this has been videotaped. I know people might want to hear this in the future. Commissioner Peterson has questions or comments.
Yes, I was curious in terms of when you say critical care paramedics, how many of our current paramedic staff would be considered critical care, and is that number going to have to change as we proceed down this road? In what way?
I currently have 0 critical care paramedics.
Okay.
And yes, that will need to change.
Well, obviously, if it's 0, what sort of additional training or qualification would they need to reach that?
What was the number? You want? Yeah,
reach
go
that
ahead.
level.
Would you like to speak to an instructor?
Sure.
So the program that we have outlined for this department for critical care transport would be about a 6-week course, including about 90 hours of didactic classroom time and 120 hours of clinical time in the hospitals, getting to learn to use this equipment on real-life patients. And then we'll also be doing a significant amount of simulation training, practicing using these mannequins to make sure that they're competent and comfortable and have been through stressful situations, at least in simulation, before we go out into real life. about 6 weeks worth of time.
Okay, well, would you,
Well-
let's say if we go ahead and let's leave aside the moment adding additional personnel as part of the decision package of our existing paramedics, how many of them would you hope to have a year from now who would reach that level of training and be qualified?
Sure. So I want to add one thing to it because he would never say it himself, but these two guys have also worked out incredible partnerships with our local healthcare experts to come into the classroom and teach about the things that are in their specialty area. We've got intensivists coming in, pediatric people lined up to really augment the course. So he wasn't going to say that, so I'll say it for him. And so the question is, how many, if we start with 4, how many would we expand into? And a little bit counterintuitively, I don't think we would expand much, if at all. And the reason that I would say that is the more people you add on, say if that 4 were to become 8, that's half the experience for any individual. So the more people that we put into these roles, it comes out of the expertise and decision making of the others. So you don't want to run too fat in a program like this. So
Yeah, but if you've got 2 people in a vehicle, and I don't know, would
Not
you
for
have,
this.
would
This
you
is-
have one person? per
this is
vehicle?
one, and this person then rendezvous with an existing ambulance crew and becomes a team of 3. So one of the existing paramedics will join them in the back, be a team of 2, twice as many as on a typical call, and then the third is the driver. So no, this is, and that's the vehicle that you guys approved previously, which is a smaller chase-type vehicle that will transport the one critical care person as well as the equipment.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Ranzau?
So the 4 FTEs to cover 24/7 or what? Or is it, or no?
It is. So to our math, to cover this, you need a little bit more than 4 FTEs to fill a full-time 24-hour position. We calculated it out at about 4.6 or 4.7 FTEs. And between these two guys being able to pick up that extra decimal point, the 4 would get us to a 24-hour program.
And again, this is, just to be clear, this is not equipment that sits on every ambulance or whatever. This is something you deploy when you've got that call. You expedite this to the scene, or to take it to a hospital to do that facility transport. But if you have to take it to a scene, you'll expedite the stuff out to the scene, and it will rendezvous with an ambulance. But it's not necessarily riding on the ambulance initially.
Correct. This
Okay.
stuff is too specific and frankly too expensive to put out in the system.
Okay, so that makes more sense. And so, no matter where you're at in the county, you'll get there. I'm going to get to the EMS response times and some of my questions I want to talk about later. But obviously, it's going to take a little bit more time to get this from where it's being stationed or stored to that scene, especially if it's in the far end of the county. So, but what it provides, I guess, is again trying to stabilize the patient before you start to transport that person. You have everything you need to do that, and sometimes, as you were describing to me earlier, to slow down and to have the right equipment in the field is more important than rushing necessarily. In many cases, rushing to the hospital. So trying to stabilize them and have the right stuff there and do it thoughtfully and carefully and slowly. Again, slowly may seem like the wrong word to use here, but slowly is better than rushing through it. So
Correct.
It's a misunderstanding. I think a lot of people. I also had the misunderstanding. I guess it's important to me to see this is just not doesn't fit my assumptions on how this would be done. It's a little bit different than what I thought.
Correct. And a testament to our other system partners, this is not a setup that's ever going to get anywhere quickly, right? But that's not the way it's built, right? We've got our partners in the fire department who do first response and are there to begin CPR and emergency breaths. We've got our partners in EMS that can be on scene rapidly to deliver cardiac medications and defibrillations. And then when the situation warrants it, not at a time-sensitive nature, but at a medical complexity, we would be able to add the critical care team, not for time, but for complexity.
That's a great way to say that. I appreciate that. Makes more sense to me now. Thank you for the show and tell. Any other comments or questions before Dr. Gallagher rolls this out of the room? Commissioners? Okay. Well, thank you for the presentation of being able to see this stuff personally. It's really nice of you to bring it up here.
Thank you.
And it's very, very impressive. Thank you for taking the time to do that. All right.
All right, moving on. Next decision package, you'll see a couple that are number ones. That's because they come out of different funds. This is the next generation 911 phone system, and if you recall earlier when we were talking about that 911 tax fee, that's where the money would come from to fund this update to the 911 phone system. This package is...
I'm sorry, go back.
Okay.
Can you
Okay.
go back?
Okay. The next package is Emergency Management Fire Reserve. It's a $19,000 would help with some fuel and with some equipment so that the fire reserve that emergency management manages could do a little more practice. But we need to evaluate this a little further to see how legally we can fund these folks. But there's potential there that they could be used in certain situations. The next one is emergency communications staffing, and I think Alora covered most of that with you, the 5 positions. The next one is reclassification of emergency communications positions, and our budget team's also looking at that. We think we have another way to move that forward without it being a decision package. The next one is increased call demand. That's the EMS call demand that Scott talked to you about. That's our number one priority in the division, is to fund those 4 positions. When I used to brief the growth in EMS calls, I'd always say it averages out to 3%, but for some reason last year it jumped to 5.7%. The next package is EMS staffing for the new station, Post 16, the one we're going to build down in Derby. And we already have the day shift. This would be the crew for the night shift for that station, handle the increased workload that we anticipate the Wesley ER is going to create down in the Derby area. And Derby is growing, and their call volume has been up as well.
Now, are we anticipating that the increased call volume will pay for this or not? Or do we know yet? Or is it just shifting?
I guess.
I thought the premise was that it would pay for itself.
Well, I think it could.
The volume we anticipate from the Wesley Derby ER is certainly goes towards to paying for the station IE and other associated things. I don't know that it pays for everything, personnel and the station, but yes, that will help, because that will be revenue that we currently don't capture right now. Once that ER opens November the 1st of this year, we'll start gathering that call volume and transporting those folks on into the main campus.
But why aren't we capturing that? Because those people that get injured now go somewhere else.
A lot of times they'll self-report private vehicle to there rather than driving on into the other just like they do at Wesley West. They report to Wesley West. They're not calling 911 wanting an ambulance. They show up there, they get evaluated, it's much more serious, and then they need to be transported onto the main campus is where we come in. So a lot of those are not calling 911 today. They're showing up in private vehicle to the hospital, to a facility to get looked at.
Next decision package is the radio replacement plan for the fire district. They have control heads on their radios now that when they break, they have to go out and find used control heads. They've quit making that type of radio and equipment, and so we're forecasting that we need to start purchasing radios in 2017 to replace those.
Is that coming out of the fire district budget?
Yes.
I mean, are they not working?
The radios, they're quit making the parts for them, and when they break now, we have to go out and look for used parts to fix them. I think, isn't that correct, Chief?
Can you replace them on an ongoing basis?
Right now.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Right now, we're able to, but what's happening is they will not guarantee the parts anymore.
No, I mean as far as replacement. Are you going to replace them all at once, or can you replace them as they go bad?
Well, we were trying to replace them all at once, and we are applying for a grant as well.
Well, why don't we just replace them as they go bad, is what I'm saying, instead of one lump sum? I mean, that was supposed to be one of the benefits of this new system is, we're not tied in to one particular manufacturer, because it's digital, right?
Right, you'll be able to have digital and analog with the newer radios, and they'll be P25 compliant. So I think we're trying to replace them one at a time like that could cause some issues on the fire ground. If we have radios that go out, then we don't have any way to replace them.
Well, you keep a stock. What I'm saying is I just consider, if they're working, they're working. I don't care what it is. It's a truck, a radio, or whatever. We don't just replace everything just because it reached an arbitrary age, but that's all I'm asking.
Okay.
Let me ask the question differently. So how many radios are we talking about total number approximately?
102 radios and then 63 truck radios. And we're talking about radios, chargers, and mics and everything.
I guess maybe I would like to know if there's a way to maybe stage this over a number of years, that type of thing. Let's say you replaced a percentage of those in the first year. You had some spares then.
Well, that's
and
kind of
then down the road when you start running out of the spares and your old equipment starts to break and you buy another set. I mean, is there a way to in other words, the new equipment and the old equipment are compatible with each other?
No.
They're not. They don't talk on the same frequencies and.
These are going to be totally different.
Okay, that's a different. Okay,
Now hold on. They have to be.
Well, they're 800 megahertz radios.
Yes.
I'm not saying they're not that, yes, but I'm saying those parts, we're not going to be able to replace them.
What I'm saying is if you're talking on a new radio, someone on the old radio can understand you and talk back to you. They're on the same frequencies and that type of thing. So
Correct.
Okay, I understand the parts are different. I know that. I understand the equipment's completely brand new. In terms of talking from radio to radio, the new equipment can talk to the old equipment, no problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Commissioners,
Yes,
we're
sir.
also going to have a workshop on this later on to where we'll totally dig into this a little bit deeper. You may come up with some more questions before then.
And if I remember reading correctly, I think that the Sheriff's Department was talking about some similar issue, I believe.
I think it's, I don't know if it's the sheriff or it's the, yeah, it's everybody.
Okay, so this is not just a fire department only problem. Right. Commissioner Peterjohn?
Yes, I was thinking along the lines when we did the digital upgrade and went digital from analog. That was about 2011, wasn't it, Chief?
Yes.
Okay, because I was thinking we had made some transitions at that time, and so with the manager's comments, I want to throw out a few things when we get to that point. Thank you.
Okay.
Special event staffing, this is a request for a revenue package, and this would allow Laura to charge for people that have events, and they'll call her and want her to put on extra staff and have dedicated channel for them. She would like your support and let her charge a $30 an hour fee for those services. Here's the division summary. For 2017, $73,310,748. We will talk about the other two departments next week. This is the decision package requests that we just went through. We'll talk about forensic science and corrections packages next week as well. This is all of the decision packages put together, although they're from different tax funds. Here's the revenue request that Laura asked for. And that concludes the first part of Public Safety Division.
Commissioner Peterjohn?
Yeah, a quick question for you, Marvin. This revenue package request, you mentioned a number of examples of possible events. Do you have an idea in terms of how many total events we're talking about per year, roughly? I mean, we're talking 10, 20, 50?
I would say less than that. I'd say maybe 5. It's not going to be a giant revenue package, but this is really forging into, and I'm sorry, I can sit up here. We've never done anything like this, and so in going forward with it, I'd just like to know I have the backing of the commission in doing so.
Yeah. Well, I was curious in terms of how large, how many events we have that would qualify where they'd have that type of need. And I know we had a half marathon earlier
Sure.
this, just a weekend or two ago.
Prairie Fire is a big one. Riverfest, of course, is. Those marathons, they generally ask for us to staff a channel during that. It just depends on the law enforcement side. I think what type of threat that they've identified, any potential hazards, is when they ask us to staff and dedicate a dispatcher to that channel. And they are compensated, we are not, and we incur the overtime cost for it.
Thank you.
You want questions on anything you've presented so far? Go all the way back to the beginning if I want to.
All right, go.
Well, I just wanted to make a point. There was a lot of discussion earlier in the year, maybe 6 months ago, about response times for EMS, and this is a good opportunity for me to point out, I guess, something that's obvious to, I think, all of us in this room, but maybe not obvious to people that are not part of county government, and that is our system of our design system to provide emergency care. And Director Hadley, you're welcome to come to the microphone. I think you probably want to say something about this as well. But our system of design is that we have first responders. We have 15 fire stations that are manned throughout the county. 9 fire stations that are manned throughout the county. Each one of them with a crew. Mm-hmm. Each one of those firefighters is trained to do medical first responder training. So the first person on the scene probably would be a firefighter in many cases. We have 15 EMS posts, and you mentioned anywhere from 13 to 19 ambulances throughout the county. It depends on what time of day it is.
Yes.
We received some criticism because our response times from an ambulance they felt wasn't fast enough. I guess they didn't. And it was almost a critical comment saying that our firefighters should show up first many times. I thought that's by design.
Correct.
So I'm looking at the numbers here on page slide 26. It shows our design standards. Again, these are internal standards we create for ourselves. These are not standards that somebody else
correct
mandates. These are our own goals that we've set for ourselves.
Yes.
9 minutes inside the city, 11 minutes on the suburban, and 16 minutes out in the county, rural. And we're hitting those response times. 2015 actual, 88.99. I'll just call it 89% of the time. Actually, the lower number there, 92.3% of the time, 88.99% of the time for the 11-minute suburban response, and then almost 82% of the time in the rural response. Again, I think there are all kinds of ways of looking at this, I suppose, but in my opinion, that's pretty impressive. I just wanted to give you a compliment and an attaboy for doing a great job. But that's not the whole story, because the rest of the story is over there on slide number 39, where it talks about what our fire department does, and their numbers are their response times we've set for ourselves. Again, I assume those are internal standards. Set those times to be much less, 6 minutes and 25 seconds for an urban response. So the moment, I guess, is this time from when 911 receives the call versus when they show up on scene? Is that how that works?
Our standards measure from the once we're dispatched till we're on scene, till the transport unit is on scene.
Okay. So there's probably a little bit of time for 911 to receive the call and them to associate what the problem is and dispatch the appropriate services out there. So I guess the point here is that the fire department they have less response time, 6 minutes 25 seconds for urban, 8 minutes 24 seconds for suburban, and then 10 minutes 45 seconds for rural. And again, they're upwards, getting close to 90%, 80% in almost all the cases, and sometimes it's close to 90% in some cases to hit those numbers. And so, as a first responder, again, I'm impressed. I like to give an attaboy to all those involved. I think this is great news. People who reported this, they acted like there was something wrong. I guess I'd like to say there's something right. I think that the other way to look at this is we're doing a good job. Again, these are internal standards, and I just want to say, to me, there's a positive message here. And I think the community's completely missed it because they were led to think something different by some of our news reports in the community. Is there anything you'd like to say about that? Because maybe my perspective isn't quite right. I'd like to hear your perspective.
No, we have certain standards that we've established for ourselves many, many years ago in many departments, and they vary across the country. There's not one standard that you can scientifically look at as far as outcomes and said this makes a difference if you're here in this many minutes and this time as far as the medical care delivered. As you mentioned in our system, and I'll back up even one step, 911 as far as medical care begins at the 911 call through the medical priority dispatching, and Alora's dispatchers give pre-arrival instructions to folks on the phone. And that starts the whole process in our system. And it gives them instructions what to do, what not to do until the first responder arrives. But we measure a variety of metrics to look at to evaluate system level performance and care that we're delivering. And they are stressed from where they used to be. They have declined over time. So that doesn't mean that folks are not getting quality care or they're not getting help. And help doesn't start when the 911 ambulance transport crew gets there. It starts before that in our system. I don't know that we've told that story very well, but it starts at the 911 call, and then when our first responders arrive to provide that initial assessment and level of care until the transport agency arrives. That's how our system's designed.
And do you think there's anything wrong with using firefighters the way we use them currently? I mean, every one of our firefighters, again, I'll look at Dr. Gallagher, I'm looking at him across the room here, but every one of Sedgwick County Fire Department firefighters, I believe, have the skill set to say they're qualified medically to provide medical services.
Right.
So they may be first on scene, but maybe it's a traffic accident, maybe it is a fire, maybe it's a medical call, whatever it is. But I think 911. I'm looking at Director Forshee. Again, so you might dispatch a firefighter apparatus at the same time you dispatch an ambulance. Is that correct? And so
that's correct.
One of them will get there first, and whoever gets there first is going to start providing services immediately.
Correct.
So we've got a very robust system. You've got two vehicles coming from different directions, weaving through traffic and do whatever you guys have to do to get there.
Correct.
So you got people from two different directions coming there, not single-threaded. We've got experts on two different vehicles coming in. Many times the firefighters will get there first because there's more of them.
Correct.
So again, I think this is a good system. And then you're talking about Director Forshee. Your staff, part of their training, is that to give them the instructions on the phone and talk about what to do? And
Absolutely. We are all CPR certified. We do all the over-the-phone instruction that we can. Absolutely.
To me, I think there's a tremendous message here that's been has not been captured adequately by the community. They don't know what the total system is. And I guess this is all by design.
Correct.
And so I guess I'm proud of 911. I'm proud of our firefighters. I'm proud of our EMS personnel. I'm proud of you, Dr. Gallagher. We have a very good system. And then Director Marv Duncan. I think, again, we've got a very robust system. I'm just really proud of the whole thing. There's a tremendous message here, and I don't think we've captured that message and got that out to the community effectively. And there's others involved. I could talk about other people, too. I mean, I'm not capturing probably everything I should talk about right now, but I guess I just want to say we received a fair amount of criticism, a number of negative reports, and as I sat there and listened to that, I was shaking my head thinking they just don't have the full story. They don't really represent this accurately and in the way I think they should. So I want to take the chance to do that now. And I would like to hear from any of you. That I haven't said something, please say whatever is on your heart there, as I'd like to hear from you. Dr. Gallagher, please.
The one thing I want to throw in there, because this is difficult and I've seen it struggle in other communities, especially in media relations, is just this morning we took the next step in moving our system into a more evidence-based, strong practice of dispatching and response, which is going to allow some of our crews to respond without lights and sirens to certain calls that Director Forshee's people have appropriately classified as not going to benefit from that rush of a response. And we then don't have to put the public at the safety risk of flying across town. And what that will do is it will actually increase our response times. We will see those numbers get longer, and that is good medicine.
And I tell you, from someone who doesn't want to be embarrassed by an ambulance coming to my house, sometimes it's a deterrent in and of itself to have a lights and siren vehicle show up to my driveway. I say if it's not really an emergency, but I need some help. Maybe someone fell down, they need help getting up, for example. having someone show up without license siren, I think, is actually encouraging basically some people to maybe get involved in making a call that they otherwise may not make, simply because they would be embarrassed by a license siren at their neighborhood or their house. I think that's a smart thing. So again, you guys are being really brilliant. I have a question for Director Hadley, and that is, an ambulance crew is 2 people. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And are they both equally qualified in terms of their skill set?
We have paramedics and EMTs that work for us both full and part-time. So we have the paramedics who have the highest level of training, and then we have the EMTs, which the vast majority of the Wichita Fire Department, Sedgwick County Fire Department are EMT basic level trained, certified in the state of Kansas. So that has the ability to provide that assessment, to breathe for someone who's not breathing, to stop the bleeding, that type of thing on those basic life support skills. And then we have the advanced life support skills for the paramedic when they arrive on scene, if they need advanced level care and IVs and medications and that type of thing.
If you need 2 people in the back to take care of the patient, what do you do to transport? How do you get a third person to drive that vehicle?
We ask the assistance of one of our first responders to ride in the back with us if we need a second hand, and or one of our supervisors will show up and provide additional care as well if that's needed.
Okay. All right, very good. I have a question for Dr. Gallagher. Dr. Gallagher, are you providing certification training or credential training, certification, what's the right word?
We do credentialing.
You do credentialing, and who do you do that for? Who you do it? I assume the EMS personnel that are the paramedics are getting that, I'm sure.
So right now, every
else?
paramedic in the system has to go through credentialing to be able to practice, and we're expanding that later this spring and summer to the EMTs, which is the predominance of the first responders. Our goal is to have everybody in the system have gone through credentialing process and demonstrated that they have the skills necessary to care for the public.
Now, like Mulvane has another EMS system that they use. Are they going to be part of this credentialing that we provide here?
Any EMS service or first responder service that exists or operates within the county is welcome to join the EMS system, of which my office oversees. So it would be their choice, but they would be welcome to join us if they choose.
And if they don't do that, what do they do? If they're not credentialing under your office, then how would they be credentialed, or what would their training
They would have to be
verified?
They would have to be affiliated with a different medical director.
Okay. Is there any other medical directors in Sedgwick County that does what you do?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I should correct that. There are, for the flight services, they're independent, the helicopter program.
Okay. So what about, like, for example, we have 19 cities. A few of them have their own fire departments. Are they also providing first responder care and getting credentialing potentially through you as well?
They could. None are currently. Derby would be the one exception. They've joined the group but have not yet started credentialing.
Okay.
But yeah, all are welcome.
Is this something new for our community, or is this something that's been going on for a while?
It's new at the EMT level. It's not new at the paramedic level.
Okay. So I assume from look at Chief Leak here. I assume from your perspective, it's our intent to get all of our firefighters to be credentialed through Dr. Gallagher's office?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
And his people have already started working with us to build that system and make sure it meets the needs of that system as well. We don't want to implement something unnecessarily.
Okay. Very good. Well, I think I've asked a lot of questions. I appreciate all you do. Really, I am very impressed. I think that we have some great things to be proud of here, and I wanted to extend my thankfulness to you all and say I'm really proud of what you do. I don't have any other questions right now. I have to look at the budget more closely later. I may have some questions about the budget itself. A lot of decision packages here. I think a lot for us to consider. But public safety is one of the most important things we do as a governance here. So I'm not surprised to see there's a lot of packages for us to consider. Commissioner Peter John?
Well, the one thing you haven't mentioned, Mr. Chairman, and I agree with your remarks, we end up working with a lot of other public safety providers in the county too. And off the top of my head, I'm not sure how many other fire departments there are in the county that are operating here, but and other public safety services tied in. And I think that speaks well for Sedgwick County employees and our public safety programs, but also for those other entities that are involved in providing public safety too. And so, and I very much appreciate the work of Dr. Gallagher see if we can get our certification levels up to where we want them to be also. Thank you.
All right. Well, I guess one more question regarding the EMS station in Derby that's yet to be built. Do we know what the schedule is for that to break ground, and do we have a goal as to when you think that'll be open?
Still waiting to hear back from the architect who has the final designs and drawings. Once they produce them, which I'm hopeful we'll see those within the next couple of weeks, they'll go out for bid for a contractor, and then we'll get the process started. So I don't know how long that stays open. I don't see anybody from purchasing here, maybe, unless Rick may know how long that usually stays open for a contractor to stay open for bid. But once we get that established, we'll break ground. But I wouldn't anticipate it being open until probably the first quarter of 2017.
I was hoping you say 2016, but okay.
Me too.
I was hoping late 2016.
Wesley's ER will be open November 1st.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good information. So I've been hopeful it would be earlier than that, but I guess
Yes.
we'll look forward to it.
I hope it will. Hope we have good weather and they can get it done.
Okay.
Thanks for your comments.
All right. Thank you, everyone. See no other questions from commissioners. We are ready, I guess, Mr. Manager, for the next step here. Everybody need a break, or are we going to be able to continue? I think we're going to continue. This next one is only 15 minutes theoretically, so we will just press forward.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ron Holt, Assistant County Manager. This presentation is on the culture, entertainment, and recreation portion of our operations. The overall mission is to enhance quality of life in Sedgwick County by providing cultural, entertainment, recreation-related educational opportunities for all citizens and visitors. Our employees and program partners are committed to providing superior customer service in our offerings of quality attractions, events, and facilities. Today, we're going to talk about Intrust Bank Arena, Sedgwick County Zoo, Exploration Place, and the community programs that fall under the culture, entertainment, recreation. You see the page numbers for the information in your budget books. Parks, a couple of years ago, you will recall, we included the operations of parks on the facilities fleets and parks, and so we won't be talking about them today. Intrust Bank Arena, it's an enterprise fund, so it doesn't fall into one of the three tiers. SMG, who operates the arena for us, is focused on operating Intrust Bank Arena in an efficient and professional manner, attracting world-class entertainment, creating memorable experiences for all guests and clients. They are both a leader in the entertainment industry and in our community, and as such, their mission is to contribute to the quality of life in Kansas and create a lasting impact through community service and charitable endeavors. I'm not going to go through all of these, but just to point out that, of course, we have an SMG management contract, and we did renew that contract for 6 additional years through December 31, 2020 and 2014, changed the operating management fee agreement, and you see the changes there, all net operating income in excess of $400,000. The first $400,000 they get to maintain, all in excess as 50-50, and the major point there is any and all operating losses, should there be any, they have full responsibility for. This was a major consideration in selecting them for this contract, and it insulates the counties from having to provide subsidies for operating losses at the arena. They also created, in the change of that agreement, a promotion fund. To date, that promotion fund has not been used. They have, of course, looked at a couple of times when they've gotten close to using it. It's really focused on getting events that may not normally come here and trying to find events that they could persuade to come here during the off months, the summer months. Again, it's a $200,000 promotion fund, and all of that money is provided up front by SMG when and if it's needed. We also, a couple of years ago, went through a pretty robust process and rigorous process and looking at developing some CIP operating guidelines We have those in place now. We put together a 20-year asset replacement program. We're working on a 5-year capital improvements program with every year, again, the capital improvements requests being made. This program provides a mechanism to plan, design, construct, repair, improve, and ultimately occupy or use capital projects necessary to pursue the mission of the arena. These are some components of our guidelines. It allows for systematic evaluation of all potential projects at the same time, provides the ability to develop a spending plan, consolidate projects to obtain optimal purchasing power, focuses on preserving the arena's infrastructure while ensuring the efficient and effective use of the Arena Operating and Maintenance Reserve Fund, and it provides an opportunity to foster cooperation with arena management and the county. 2017 budget request for the arena from property tax funds. Again, it's non-property tax funds supported, so none. 2017 request for non-property tax funds, $1,230,000, $350,000 that's for arena operations, $880,000 that's for arena capital improvements. The arena operations piece of that is we have 3 of our funding partners whose agreements are directly with Sedgwick County, but in those agreements they have rights for ticketing, and they have rights for certain tickets and rights for certain signage and so forth, and that's what that $350,000. So it is passed through from our funding back to the arena out of those naming rights funds. We do not have any decision packages, revenue packages, or alternative reduction packages. Moving on to the zoo. It's a Tier 3. Yes, sorry.
Can I ask some questions of this before we?
Sure.
Now, capital improvements, $880,000. I thought we allocated $250 a year by the contract. Is that not accurate, or are we just going over, or what?
No, when we developed the capital improvements program, we set out that 20-year program, and we're looking at 5-year increments, and then on a yearly basis, what the needs are relative to repair, maintenance, and upkeep for the program. I think what you're remembering is we have in the agreement, if I can recall it correctly, and Cronus may have to help me, we have in the agreement that any capital improvements, it has to do with the management fee, and that any capital improvements at the $250,000 level, we get to get reimbursed out of those funds, out of the operating funds, before we start doing the management split or the management fee split. But we were.
And we approve the. Okay.
Yes.
Now, with respect to the new contract, do we have audited results? Do we know how much? We haven't got our check yet, right?
We have. I sent you, Commissioners, a copy of the audit report and a copy of the check right after the 1st of April.
Okay. Well, I'd like to see an analysis of what the total was if the contract would have been renewed automatically under the previous contract, and then how much we would have received over the previous 5 years if we have the new contract. I want to see the difference in between the two contracts.
Can do that.
Thank you.
All right. Sedgwick County Zoo mission, it's a Tier 3, falls into the Tier 3 programming areas to inspire discovery, appreciation, respect for animals and nature. The services the zoo provides, it's a community asset to provide a safe, family-friendly environment in a zoological setting of the highest standards. Residents of Sedgwick County and surrounding communities, for the residents of Sedgwick County and surrounding communities, serves an estimated 550,000 visitors annually, including nearly 50% from outside Sedgwick County. It is the #1 tourist attraction in the state of Kansas. Annually, it is estimated the zoo provides about a $43 million economic impact to Sedgwick County, and they engage more than 75,000 students and adults with field trips, education classes, and community program outreach. The operation of a world-class zoo in Sedgwick County is what we have experienced over the years and continue to experience. Citizens of Sedgwick County receive the benefits of one of the largest zoos in the country, one of the best operating cost-benefit ratios. We have one of the 10 best zoos in the United States, one of the 25th best zoos in the world. It's one of the largest animal collections of both species and specimens in the country, yet with one of the lowest number of full-time zoo staff. It's been a public-private partnership over the years. Our community's been able to create, develop, and have a world-class zoo for citizens because of the public-private partnership between Sedgwick County and Sedgwick County Zoological Society since its inception in the 60s. This partnership allows affordability for all of the citizens of Sedgwick County to be able to have access to the zoo. The Sedgwick County Zoo has a total of $57 million in assets, continues to enhance the quality of life of individual citizens in the community at large. Of that $57 million, about $33 million of that has been raised by the Zoological Society since 1993. In November of 2015, we terminated the funding agreement between Sedgwick County and the Sedgwick County Zoological Society. Discussions are currently ongoing between Sedgwick County and the Society over the operating agreement and future funding that was announced we would be doing when we announced that termination in December, or in November, I guess it was. The 2017 budget request, we don't have a number yet. It's to be determined as we continue to have discussions around the operating budget and operating agreement, and we would hope within a few weeks here we would be done with that and have a number that we would be talking about for the 2017 budget. There would be no funds to the zoo from non-property tax funds. They would all be from property tax funds. We don't have any decision packages, submission packages, decision packages, revenue packages, or alternative reduction proposals. Exploration Place, Tier 3 programming as part of county operations, inspire deeper interest in science through creative and fun experiences for people of all ages. It's the mission of the Exploration Place. The programmatic vision is to align with community initiatives and support workforce development. It's Kansas's premier science center, offers innovative hands-on exhibits, including a full schedule of traveling exhibits. The plan is to renovate or create one permanent gallery each year. Educational films and shows in the Dome Theater. It serves citizens of Sedgwick County and the residents of the other residents of the state. For fiscal year 2014-15, served 75,000 individuals in education programs both on-site and off-site. Provides quality education resources focusing on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics for those in the county and the state, and is becoming more and more sought after to provide that kind of experiential training and experiences for our students. STEM education programs provides partnerships to schools and groups in the county and state that help meet their educational objectives and goals. Since opening, EP provided programs to more than 500,000 students in the county and the state. And through these programs, Exploration Place is creating direct links to prepare the 21st century workforce and spark an interest in young people to consider careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Currently, EP has 44 FTEs, which is far below the national data for comparable science centers. Our funding, county funding, helps with the funding of operations, which allows EP fundraising for support of the renovation of exhibits that increase earned revenue, including membership. As we talked about last year and the year before, even improvements been deferred for the 16-year-old iconic building that has a full schedule of preventive maintenance and repairs and improvements to the aging infrastructure, and that's becoming more and more prevalent as the years go along. The building committee there, though, is doing an extraordinary job in getting their arms around that and has developed and working on a plan to address issues as they come up and to anticipate what they might be. The 2017 request for funding for services from the top property tax funds is $2,220,140. This is same as 2016 funding. No funding from the non-property tax funds, no submission packages. The community programs under culture, entertainment, recreation are designed to support local agencies providing enhanced quality of life for Sedgwick County residents and visitors. These are all that fall in the Tier 3 area. Again, the variety of cultural and recreational activities through community programs are in really down to these three organizations: the Sedgwick County Fair Association, the Kansas African American Museum, and the Wichita Sedgwick County Historical Museum. Funding requests from property tax funds for 2017 is $292,472, same as 2016. No non-property tax funding requests, no submission packages. So in summary, you see from property tax funds, we have the zoo yet to be determined, expiration place $2,221,040, community programs $292,472 for a total of $2,512,612. From non-property tax fund, which is the arena, out of the Arena Operating Maintenance Reserve Fund, $1,230,000. It's kind of small there, but it gives you then comparisons: 2014 actuals, 2015 revised, 2016 revised, and the changes. And you see under the community programs, the funding request is only for 3 programs next year. For 2017, the Kansas Junior Livestock Show moved, and we're no longer providing funding there. The Arts Council no longer providing funding there. The Greater Wichita Sports Commission, we're no longer a member there. And the River Festival, while it's not in the budget, they do have from year to year many times come and seek additional funding, and those can be handled on an ad hoc basis, if you will. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holt. We got Commissioner Peterjohn with questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back on slide 25, Ron, when you said Exploration Place, their 2017 budget request was roughly $2.2 million. My recollection is we're also paying principal and interest on that building, about $1.1 million, I think, and I'm not sure how many years we've got left to pay that off. I think it's 4 or 5 years down the line. So is the principal and interest for that building, that's not part of this $2.2 million, is it?
No, sir. It's not. This is just for the funding agreement for operations.
Okay. And so it's strictly the operational portion. The principal and interest portion, my recollection correct on that we've got about somewhere 4 to 6 years to pay that off, to when that pays off?
I think it's a few more years than that, isn't it?
2023 is what I remember.
Yeah, I think it's 6 or 7 years, more years left on that.
More terms, 6 to 7 then?
Right.
Okay. Well, I wasn't sure of the number and wanted to get it there in terms of what the costs were. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Ranzau?
Yeah, Ron, I'd like to get some information on attendance numbers at Exploration Place. I think we've asked before. I want to get as detailed as we can as far as, I don't know how detailed they track them, but on a daily basis, who actually shows up there on a daily basis, how many are members, and how many just showed up for other things, how much of the attendance is off-site. I'd like to be as itemized and as detailed as possible.
We could do that. Jan is here. We'll get that for you. I know last year we provided some information that was pretty detailed, but we can see what that was and if it needs to be enhanced.
Okay. I remember asking about this before, but I'm not sure if I ever got exactly quite what I was interested in, unless I'm not remembering it right. But
okay.
Okay, thanks.
Do you remember? Excuse me. Do you remember if the attendance is up over previous year? 75,000 seems like a bigger number.
That 75,000, I think, is just for outreach programs. That doesn't address the actual attendance. I think the attendance is more around 200,000.
That sounds right.
give or take. Those are just for the educational programs.
That sounds right. That's a great reminder there. And I'm just curious on the offsite. Can you explain what does that mean? I mean, Director Jan Luth is here, so thank you for being here today. Director of Exploration Place, Jan Luth. I just want. I've heard about the offsite stuff, but in the past, but I don't really understand it completely. Can you please talk about that a little bit?
We do outreach programming to schools. In some cases, we have contracts. In some places, we have grants where we're going into schools all over the area. For example, Sumner County, we have a grant. We go to, I think it's 44 classrooms every week throughout the school year, and we teach science to 3rd and 4th grade classes. We've had similar things with Hyde Elementary, with the WSU preschool. So those are some examples. We also do a lot of outreach in the evenings for family nights at schools all over South Central Kansas, not just in the Wichita-Sedgwick County area. We also do all summer long outreach to libraries. And so those are just a few of the top examples.
So what do you take with you when you teach these classes? I mean, how do you transport Exploration Place exhibits and stuff?
We have a vehicle or two, and we have all kinds of things in big plastic containers, and each program is labeled, and the educators grab the kits, and off they go, and they deliver these dynamic hands-on programs into the schools and in libraries and in classes. Sometimes it's like a show, sometimes it's hands-on activities at their desks, and we do activity stations all scattered around the room, and I mean, scores of topics.
Do we have any reporting on the grant dollars that are subsidizing some of this?
Yeah, we have all that information.
Okay.
Sure.
And is that money coming from the state or federal
No,
government?
private.
Private grant. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Commissioner Ranzau?
What do you
I
want
just
to
might ask Jan to add, I know you talked about outreach programs, but I think the homeschooling relationships, how are you counting those?
Those are part of our education numbers. I think our education numbers were around 70,000 last fiscal year. That was both on-site and off-site. We have an active homeschool program where groups come in every month, and they are given all kinds of hands-on classes that we do. And then we have an annual event every year with homeschool. So we do a lot of that as well. Besides just the traditional school field trip, we're doing so much more. And summer camps is another example of our education programs, and some of those are happening at Exploration Place. And some of them, we have some community partners. For example, we do programs at the Independent School, and we're doing some off-site programs at some other schools in the area, a couple from the Catholic Diocese as well as private schools. And those are all fee-based.
Okay, great. That's great information. Commissioner Ranzau?
I think that when you said fee-based, you may have answered my question. When you go to all the other schools and stuff, do they pay a fee for your services?
Yes, sir.
And it covers all your costs?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We cost it out so that we come out at...
What about homeschoolers?
They pay as well.
They pay.
Yeah. Everyone wants our services for free, but we can't do that.
I understand. Thank you.
Can I have a seat?
So I guess one quick question. The 75,000, is that included in your...
70,000.
Well,
It's okay.
so we had, I have to find...
Of that 70,000, I can't tell you standing here today how many of those are outreach education and how many of those are on-site education. I know our combined on-site and off-site attendance last fiscal year was about 230,000.
Okay, that's what I wanted to find out.
Okay.
That's all my questions. Any other questions from commissioners? All right. I think that's great. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager, we're ready for the next thing on our agenda here, which is a little bit ahead of schedule. Ready for, I guess, for discussion.
I think that wraps it up, unless you have any specific points you want covered.
I'll look at commissioners for further discussion. One thing I just wanted to point out, I guess, there's a lot of information here that you all have prepared for us in these other two books, and there's details on these decision packages. There's details on things we've already heard, and the bigger budget binder that you've given us. And so I'm not sure if we're supposed to go look at that on our own, and just is there going to be some type of, how do we use these books more effectively? Let me ask the question that way. what should we be doing here?
Well, as departments are putting together their presentations for you, they'll be listing the page numbers of the documents so that you can follow along if you do have specific questions. And so I would say the presentation is going to be the meat and potatoes of it, but then if you want details on a specific budget request, that would be how I would suggest using at least Volume 1, which is all of the budget summary information. I also would point you to that budget summary section in Volume 1 because there's 5 or 6 different tables in there that outline information by fund, by department. It includes FTEs. It shows what their total budgets have been over time. And so that might be a quick and easy way to identify if there's any areas that you might have questions about. And that would be just behind the Budget Summaries tab in Volume 1. Volume 2, I think the departments are walking you through those details on the decision packages, alternative reduction proposals, and revenue packages. But certainly there's much more detail, much more justification, information on how their performance measures will change if those are implemented in Volume 2. And so I think that's probably worth a fair amount of your time if you've got a few minutes to spare. And there's also attachments from departments where a lot of the information you'll see up here is presented, but they also have included even more details. So if there's something that has piqued your interest and you feel like you need more information, that might be a good first step. And then, of course, we're happy to pull together any information for you. So I think those are probably the tips and tricks I'd suggest for using those 2 volumes. And we can come and talk with you if you have specific questions about anything, too.
I think I have some more questions in just a minute. Let's go to Commissioner Ransaw.
Well, I'm just curious about, we have these priorities by department and by division in the decision packages.
Oh, yes.
And the department priorities seem to make sense to me, I guess, but divisions, are they supposed to be all in numerical order? I mean, shouldn't there be a 1, 2, 3, or can they be multiple? Like I'm looking at public safety, I'm looking at culture and recreation. Sedgwick County Park has water cost 1 and then it's a 4, but I can't seem to see where maybe I need to.
No, and I think I understand exactly what you're saying. Within the Division of Public Safety, those departments that report to Marv Duncan, he went through and prioritized just those. So we would still have the sheriff and the district attorney and the district court that would operate within their own, what we would call kind of division for this purpose. When Marv was talking, he had said that some of those have different funding sources. So like the fire district isn't necessarily in competition for dollars from the county general fund. So he did his own prioritization for that request. Same thing for the 911 phone system. Moving over to culture and rec, the parks are technically a part of facilities, fleet, and parks. And so Steve Clausen went through and evaluated those within facilities department, fleet department, and the parks department. And so it's more about the organizational structure.
So
I
we go to
apologize
the
for that
facilities
confusion.
so I can see that.
Right.
Okay. Now I see the 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Thank you.
Looking at page 5 in the budget book. And
Volume
also looking
1
at
or Volume 2?
Volume 1. Yeah, Volume 1. And also looking at the long sheet you've given us, it looks like this financial forecast shows we're going to be reducing our ending balance by $6.5 million. Long sheet.
Within all county property tax supported funds, yes.
Okay.
But I would just point out that this document doesn't yet include the budget document doesn't yet include those capital improvement projects and things that could increase the budget, and so you'll see them in the long sheet, but not necessarily in the book.
Okay. I just noticing the very bottom line of page 5, and I've seen this a couple different places here, but 2015 actual revenue versus expenditures, you're looking at expenditures was about $2 million less than revenue.
For all of our operating funds, yes.
Okay.
For this sheet, we would only be looking at the general fund, the debt service fund, and then the countywide property tax supported funds. And so those would be comparable operating results to what you then see on the long sheet. So just that, the first 9 rows of page 5.
Okay.
Except we would want to, you could ignore the fire district bond and interest, not that there's anything to report there. But those are similar groupings of funds between this sheet and that sheet. Is that making sense?
I think so. What I was going to get to is the 2016 and the 2017 budgets. Those numbers are $36 million and then $33 million apart. So looking at 2015, they're $2 million less in the expenditures column, and 2016 is $36 million more, and then 2017 projection is $33 million above. I'd like to be able to correlate those numbers to everything else I've just seen over other places.
Sure. And I'll tell you just a quick point on that, and we'll go through and reconcile it, of course. But contingencies are included in the budget, that additional budget authority that we don't necessarily anticipate needing. Whereas actuals, if we didn't spend that contingency, it wouldn't be reflected there. So there'll always be kind of a gap related to that.
That does make sense. Okay. All right. Commissioner Peterjohn?
Let me jump in on page 5 on the line for Interest Bank Arena. Expenditures for 2015 actual, which would be the year end, the expenditure was just a little bit less than 1.2 million, but the revenue side was a little bit less than 600,000. Now, walk me through, because that was an enterprise fund. I would assume that would include all revenues and expenditures, and if our revenue was roughly half our expenditure, I don't think SMG would be cutting us a check, would they?
What this reflects is what Ron had outlined in his request, the arena operations and the arena capital improvements. There's some other activity that occurs in different areas of the Interest Bank Arena that we report on in the quarterly report. For budget purposes, the revenue you see here is mostly related to those, the naming rights, that $590,000 that was included in the 2017 budget request. And so we received that $590,000 in 2015, and then it also looks like we had a little bit of miscellaneous revenue that I can look and see exactly what that came from.
Okay, so it's incomplete compared to the total picture for the arena.
Right. This is just the
this
county's
part.
operating budget.
Okay. Well, in terms of some of the, just trying to understand how it interacts with the other funds, and I'll be kind to you and not say my magic word, appreciation.
Hey, I'm ready.
Commissioner Ranzo?
Yeah, on these numbers that you're giving us here, we have the budget and revenue and all this stuff. Does this already have the pay increase figured in?
Yes. In both the forecast and the budget book right now, there is a 2.5% compensation pool included, and there's also the 7% increase for health insurance costs.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I should have said that at the
But
outset.
none of the decision packages have been put into here.
Correct.
Thank you.
Last year you gave us another, how do I say it? I think each agency provided a first buy or last buy type of analysis. Are we going to get that again this year?
We actually asked them to do the program inventory in lieu of the prioritization this year, and that was the document that we passed out at the retreat. And so at this point, no, there's not a plan to ask departments to go through and prioritize their programs.
Okay. All right. Further questions from commissioners?
I really like that prioritization document.
Noted.
All right. I don't see any other questions from the commissioners. Mr. Manager, anything else? Mr. Cornish or Ron Holt? Anybody else? I'm looking around the room. I mean, this is a chance for anybody to speak up. We don't have to be too formal here, I guess. All right. I guess we're dismissed for today. We'll come back at this tomorrow. And at what time? 1 o'clock, I guess? 1:30 tomorrow? Okay. All right, we'll see you all tomorrow.